going to have this be a kind of a live conversation going around the table. It's going to kind of take a life of its own. So please welcome Abby Rockefeller to the table. Abby, thank you very much. We have Chris Lindstrom, is Abby's son, if you don't know Chris. Chris sits on the board of an organization called Kiss the Ground. They're a not-for-profit that is supporting the regenerative agriculture space. Chris, welcome to the table. Come on. Elizabeth Kucinich is a holistic thinker, and she's also a mentor for organizations and companies and policymakers and individuals too. So if you might catch her and ask her what her rates are, I don't know what they are, but and the life-supporting holistic regenerative philosophy. Elizabeth, welcome to the table. Dave Chapman has been a lifelong farmer, and he's also the founder of the Real Organic Project, whose mission is to keep the integrity in the word organic, and that means battling the, as Joel would say, U.S. duh. Yeah. Dave, come on to the table. And right now, last but definitely not least by any stretch of the imagination, we have Ben Dobson. In 2015, Ben co-founded Hudson Carbon along with Abby, and Hudson Carbon studies the intersection of regenerative agriculture, economy, and climate. Ben, come on to the table. I was about 10 years old. I started experiencing extremely terrible abdominal pain. Not long after that, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And what I found was, about 10 years later, after the drugs and the surgeries and none of that stuff really worked, I found that if I changed my diet, I was able to become asymptomatic and stop taking medication. So I became very passionate about eating healthy food, and that's why I'm here today. That's why food is very important to me. And ironically, a lot of the food I wanted to eat was outlawed, or if it wasn't outlawed, it was legal for sale, but the government was warning that you shouldn't eat it because if you do, you might get sick. So I became very active in the food freedom movement, particularly the raw milk movement, and I went to many courthouse rallies all around the country where farmers were being persecuted for selling fresh raw milk directly to their neighbors. And that's why I'm here today. So I want to start a discussion after we're going to go around the table and talk a little bit why we're all here, and we're trying to keep it short as well. But that's why I'm here today. And one of the issues we're going to cover is talking about food freedom. And Abby, why are you here today?
I'm here because you had a good idea, which was that we should do this, and I agreed. And it's what I have wanted this place to be.
Bring up to the mic.
Sorry. Yeah, it's what I have wanted this whole place to be. Is a place to talk about the stuff that Joel talked about and on with it and try to form plans to fix it. So that's why I'm here.
Chris, what draws you to the table today? And you don't get to say my mom made me come.
Oh, damn.
I get to say
that. Truth. No. Would draw. Would
I mean, you're on the board of Kiss the Ground.
Yes.
So.
And to invoke what I think is the essence of the mission of Kiss the Ground and our mission here is to participate in the creation of a new conversation that I think is really the seed of the rebirth of our nation. Because in a way, we've come to the end of a period where we're all here because we recognize that our world, and particularly the American experiment, has been really sick. It's been ill. We have been suffering from a dis-ease that I would say is a spiritual and psychological and cultural disease, and that is evident in the system of food that we are partaking in. Because our system of food is killing the planet. So we can all agree on that. And that's a foundation that we can actually start the process of healing. And that process of healing, I think, comes from recognition of where some of our forebears, and I want to invoke, the ancestors of this land, the Haudenosaunee, the people who were known as the Iroquois Confederacy, because I feel like, as Americans, we took a lot from their system, but we left a lot out. And so we're coming to a point where I think we need to acknowledge the health of that, the system that had been created by our indigenous forebears and brethren. And part of that is the recognition that the earth is sacred and we are part of a larger living body. And we're cells in that body. And it's our job now to become the immune system of that body and not the disease anymore. And we are at a point where we can become that immune system because we've come to a point where we can discern in a way that invites us to step into a healthy, sacred relationship to the food that we grow and the environment in which supports that food.
Wow, thank you. That was beautiful, Chris. Elizabeth, why did you accept our invitation to come here today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really humbled to be at this table with such giants. I'll try. It's the girly problem. I'm here. I stepped on this food journey because my mother had Crohn's disease, and I watched her almost die when I was in primary school.
Oh, wow.
And counterintuitive to following the instructions of the doctors who said, we will have to remove large sections of your insides and we will manage your disease with drugs, she said, and this was a big thing for an English woman at the time, no, I don't believe you. I'm going to study whole food nutrition, and I'm going to see what that does. And she did, and she cured herself, and she rebalanced her microbes in her gut, and she did it with yogurt and mainly a vegetarian diet. And I have a wonderful mother who now does not suffer from Crohn's disease, can eat whatever she wants, but has also now got a healing and teaching sanctuary just outside London and has become, the community healer herself. So that journey of questioning authority and the conventional line and thinking outside of what it is that we've been taught by the institutions has led me here.
Wow. Thank you, Elizabeth. Joel, how did you get to be a lunatic farmer over food? I've never actually heard it.
Yeah, well, what a lot of people don't realize is that in our very conservative southern neighborhood, the farmers feel very threatened by us. They actually believe that our unvaccinated chickens outdoors are going to commiserate with the red-winged blackbirds and the indigo buntings and take their diseases to their Tyson chicken houses, and they're going to lose their farm because we're so negligent. We don't vaccinate our cows, and they rub noses through the fence, and so they're going to give their cows whatever, some disease. They're going to lose their farm because we don't vaccinate our cows. And so I'm called Typhoid Mary and a bioterrorist. I'm not making this up, all right? And so my support community is not the local farmers. My support community is our customers, our food, our food cheerleaders, okay? And so I could either be very frustrated and angry and, about this, or I can have fun with it and say, yeah, I'm a lunatic, it's okay. and so I started that, one of the times when I was called a bioterrorist, literally a guy called me on the phone, that was a bioterrorist. I hung up and I said, you know what, I'm going to embrace this. Let's just have fun with this. And so I said, I'll be the lunatic, and it's become it's a handle, man. It's like a brand. It's the cool thing.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Joel.
Oh, wow.
Dave, you've lived on a farm your whole life.
With a short gap, yeah.
With a short gap.
Yeah.
Why are you here today, and why are you so inspired to make sure the integrity stays in the word organic?
So I moved to Vermont when I was young. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I was on a dairy farm, but I grew to Vermont, and I became a vegetable farmer, and of course I became organic because it actually wasn't a choice in the People's Republic of Vermont. It was a different community, and it was an easy choice. And I went through, we developed a movement stronger and stronger. The USDA came in. It was our own senator who led that effort to create the National Organic Program. I did not support it, but I had to say after a number of years I was wrong. And it looked like the National Organic Program was working very well. Organic was certainly growing as something that people were connected to in the stores. And I honestly didn't go to things like this. I didn't go to conferences. So that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I discovered, in fact, that it wasn't going so well outside of Vermont. And when I realized that the I do like that, Joel. When I realized that the USDA was certifying hydroponic as organic, that was for me the wake up, because I grow tomatoes, and I'm like, what are all these perfect tasteless tomatoes certified organic on the market? And I found out. Yeah. And it was done very surreptitiously. It's not a secret anymore because we have big mouths. But then I discovered, confinement livestock was getting certified as organic. Unbelievable. Huge chicken CAFOs certified as organic. Nobody in the organic community believed that this should be called organic. But it was clearly a battle, and it wasn't just with the USDA, it was with Congress, and it was ultimately a battle with industry. It was a battle with corporations. And huge grain fraud also, which feeds the confinement livestock. That's not organic, but it's certified as organic. So I was outraged and dismayed, and after a big defeat, we had a choice. Would we just go home and allow organic to become meaningless, or would we do something? And the farmers decided to do something. So we started the Real Organic Project. We have an add-on label trying to identify real organic. And we got 1,100 farms certified now after 4 years. That's a good start. That's why I'm here.
Thank you, Dave. Ben, now were you actually born on an organic farm, like at home, birth on the farm?
I was born in the living room on an organic farm in Hillsdale, New York.
Okay.
And that birth was acknowledged 7 years later. My mom took me to town hall to get a birth.
What about the Social Security number? You don't have
That came at the same time.
Okay.
My dad really didn't want me to have one, but the public school said we had to have one.
So you kind of grew up with food in your DNA a little bit, but if that's not correct, just cut me off now. But why are you here today, besides the food DNA you have? Right?
What I share with all of you is I'm here today because of my mom and dad, but why I'm at this table today was also because of them. They went back to the land in the early 80s and met at the University of California Farm and Garden Project. And they took land back from my grandfather that he let them farm on. And they were the second certified or organic type farm in the area. The first was Hawthorne Valley. And this was in 1983. And they raised us in the very soil and compost and sort of embodied where our thinking has evolved, and I have them to thank for a lot. So I was able to, understand some of the fundamentals of soil health and compost and farming early, but also realize that, like, hey man, my dad can't drive a tractor, and my mom's got to go out for buying a horse, and so I've been really focused on the intersection of how does organics farming and regenerative agriculture become a thing that operates at the scale of community and at the scale of regions, so that we can get to a place where it's a fundamental part of the way we live. And I've been lucky enough to get that experience here. And then 28 years later, I met Abby, who's done as much for me as she has for this whole community and place and helping move these collective visions forward. Thank you.
Let's kind of jump right into it. One of the big questions, this is a very difficult question, but it's something we have to address as not just at this table, but when we go back home to our local communities with and on a bigger level as well, is when we want food to be safe and healthy. I think we can all agree to that to some extent. But what happens when the food that you're saying is good for my health, you're being told by a government agency or someone in a place of authority that they say, no, you can't eat that. To me, that hits really home to a core place of like a humanitarian kind of intersection where, we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this country, and just in coveting life in general, and food being a fundamental for life. It's not like an entertainment, even though we want our food to taste good, right? But food is just so fundamental to life, regeneration, the offspring, the future, the culture. It's really hard to separate the food we eat from our health and our well-being. And the way I kind of see it is our health and our well-being, the healthier we are, to that extent, changes the dynamic to which we can experience life and to the dynamic to which we can perform our life. Mm-hmm. So, in thinking about the balance of power, where how much power should a federal government have versus a local community versus the autonomy of the individual, is one of the big questions I want us all to kind of wrestle with and go back and forth over as we think about this issue of food freedom and like these farmers that go to court, right? I had this conversation with Joel before. The government was telling him you can't sell this chicken, and he has the customer telling him the doctor says my wife, if she doesn't eat this food, she's going to die. And that puts Joel as the farmer in this, right in the middle of this moral decision of, do I break the law and help this person who needs this food? Or if I am going to break the law, is the law even a just law? And like, what do we do in those situations? Joel, would you share that story with everyone?
Yeah, okay, you showed me a curveball. I was ready to. I just wanted to make a point, and yes, I will share this story. But the point I'm going to make is that, to my knowledge, there's no government agency that says you can't eat it. What it says is that the farmer can't sell it. So if the prohibition is only on one side of the equation, if you can acquire it under the table, black market, whatever, you can eat it, you can feed it to your kids, that's fine, that's perfectly legal. But as a farmer, I can't sell it. So the prohibition is only on one side. If it was really a hazardous substance like cocaine, I don't want to get into a drug discussion, but if it was really a hazardous substance, the prohibition should be not only can you not sell it, but you can't even buy it. You can't even eat it. But if you can buy it, if you can find somebody that'll sell it to you, it's okay. It's only on one side. So we had the government showed up, and we were processing chickens in the outside the yard, and they came and said, this is illegal. You can't have an open-air processing facility. Open-air processing is inherently unsanitary. And I had just had the day before, a guy come, we were eating supper down in the kitchen and knock on the door. I went up to see it, and there was a guy standing there holding his wife in his hands. She was about 80 pounds, skinny. And he just said, my wife all meat is toxic except, untoxic stuff. The doctor says if she doesn't get good meat protein, especially chicken, she's going to die. I don't think they were going to a regular MD. They were going to some functional naturopath or something. Anyway, so she's going to die. He said, can you help me? And I looked at those government agents, inspectors standing there telling me that our chicken was inedible because we butchered outdoors. And I told them this story, and I said, this is in your hands, gentlemen. You can either make this difficult or hard, but this lady is going to get her chicken. You can take me to jail, you can do whatever you want to, but she's going to get this chicken. I'm going to feed her. Now, it's your decision. Because if there's one thing that makes my hackles go up is when somebody stands there and says, just doing my job. That's what they said when they pushed the button at Auschwitz. Don't ever come to me and say, just doing my job. Did you leave your heart at the office? Did you leave, I'll get on my soapbox here, but that's
get on your soapbox.
That's the story. I mean, in my view, I'm not going to sit here and debate whether there should be a food safety inspection service. I can say, in my view, there shouldn't be none. That food is not a government any more than COVID was a government issue. But that's my aggressiveness. But I will say that there ought to be freedom of exchange between neighbors, voluntary, consenting adults exercising freedom of choice to acquire the sustenance for their microbiome without a bureaucrat in between. I was in California speaking at a university out there. I had a lecture hall of 300 students, and the discussion kind of went this direction. And so in curiosity, I said, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you think that in order for you to eat a carrot out of your own garden, there should be a government agent that signs off that that's a safe carrot to eat? And a third of the hands went up.
No.
A third of the hands went up.
Uh-oh.
Now,
We're in
2/3
trouble.
didn't. 1/3 did. I was speechless. 1/3 of the hands went up. That's where we are. That's where we are. So anyway, I just think that when the government gets between my lips and my throat, that's an invasion of privacy. And that's why I advocate a food emancipation proclamation. Now those are powerful words. Food emancipation proclamation. But right now, let's take the empty store shelves during COVID.
Yeah.
Imagine if instead of this country being supplied, of course, I'm in the livestock business. So imagine if instead of this country being supplied by 300 mega processing facilities with 5,000 employees, a few around the country, if instead it was supplied by 500,000 community abattoirs.
Exactly.
Would we have had that we had, in 2020? I suggest not.
When it was hard to find food.
Yeah, when the store shelves were empty, because it's a lot more adaptable. If you're a speedboat, it's easier to navigate the shoals of disruption than if you're an aircraft carrier. And so small becomes adaptable, large becomes regimented and unmanageable. And so yeah, I'm a big believer in if we had true market access for our farmers, we would have thousands and thousands of entrepreneurial farmers accessing their communities with everything from pot pie to charcuterie to edible hot pockets.
Like Amos Miller.
Yeah, like Amos Miller. Yeah. mean, I wrote the book. Everything I want to do is illegal.
I know.
In fact, I had a guy tell me recently. He said that's the wrong title for that book. I said, oh really? He said no. He said in today's world, the real title should be Everything I Need to Do is Illegal.
Yeah. Mine would be Everything I Want to Eat is Illegal.
Yeah.
I spent the night at Amos Miller's farm Thursday night, 2 nights ago, and as we were driving up here. And he's in a tough spot. In the next 3 weeks, for those of you that don't know, he's looking at either jail time or a $300,000 fine if he doesn't shut down his operation. His operation is basically this. He's raising food on the farm, butchering it on the farm, processing on the farm, and he's doing so for his private membership. These are individual consenting adults, human beings that are being given the credibility to serve on juries, convict people to life in prison, serve in the military, run around with weapons, run for office. I mean, the people are smart enough to do all these things, but when it comes to deciding the food they want to eat, somehow they can't figure it out. So Amos has this membership agreement you sign that says, I understand how this is against USDA and what they think, and we want you to process it on the farm without chemicals. And so this is consenting adults saying they want to eat this food this way, but the USDA is shutting them down, wanting to put him in jail, sell his farm off if he doesn't pay the fine because they're saying it's against policy. It's unsafe, and Dell Bigtree is here. Everyone probably knows that. On Dell's show, the High Wire every Thursday, a couple shows back, they had this amazing segment on Amos Miller. If you haven't heard of Amos before, a lot of us sounds like we have, but if you haven't, go to Dell's show, the High Wire, a couple weeks back. I think the episode's called Food Fight, and check out what's going on with Amos.
Yeah, people ask, when you read my bio, there was a Christian libertarian, and so the Christian part of me, when people ask, what's the role of government? Actually, the New Testament in the Bible is pretty clear that the role of government is to be a terror to evil and an encourager of righteousness. What we have right now is our government has become a terror to righteousness and an encourager of evil.
Yeah. Whoa.
Elizabeth, I have a question for you. So how does holistic regenerative thinking, how does that get applied to what we're talking about this idea of food freedom, about consenting adults? I want to raise the food. I want to eat the food. Let's come together and make that equation happen.
I think we have to look at the roles within the structures. So government is there, arguably, should be protecting the masses. There's been a lot in the past of issues with food safety, with contamination. So there are reasons why rules are in place. But at the same time, those rules are penalizing the people who are doing it right and who are actually helping people and who are, as Joel is doing, agriculture in a correct, beautiful way at the appropriate scale, having healthy animals or healthy land. And it's penalising those people because they're easy to go after. And it's not penalising the really big monopolies and the big companies within the ag space who are doing everything wrong. They might, and the question that Joel had raised, or the concept that we've sterilised our food system for safety, perhaps, for those kinds of things, for shelf stability, to make sure that we're not catching things. But we've lost all the microbes that keep us healthy. So there has to be a balance. We've got to work out how to do that. And having an attack on local food producers and local food systems isn't the way that we're going to produce resilience or health. And allowing these people instead to be taking over the lands and the farmers' methods and the foods that they're producing, and mechanizing and industrializing a food system is literally killing us. So there needs to be a sensible conversation at a local level, but also at a federal one. But we have to understand the roles that each of us are playing within the system in order to be able to transform it. So is there a room for big ag? Is there a room for whatever? How do we host and really facilitate those conversations and bring the communities together? In regenerative perspective, our role is to build relationships, whether it's building a relationship between the plant and the soil, the microbe and whatever, or whether it's between ourselves and our government structures. We have to start to build those connections and understand those functions.
Thank you. If I didn't mention it before, you guys just kind of jump in like we were sitting around the table last night. And if you have something that's inspiring that you want to say, just go ahead and go for it.
Okay. I got something.
Yeah.
So
I feel like we're too in order right
we're
now.
awfully polite right now.
Remember all the laughing, all the interrupt. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So, I said that I was really opposed to the USDA getting involved in certification, and that I thought I was wrong, and then I thought I was right. But I have come to learn that it's not just government, it's power, it's corporations. And we see that the corporations, they don't care if it's no government, that's fine. Regenerative is being completely greenwashed now by corporations. It's like whatever it meant, that's not what it's about to mean.
Right.
And there's really no way that I know of to stop that except to start a real regenerative movement, just like there's a real organic movement. And we say, no, there's a real difference. You're being misled. So I think that, it's important to understand that we're dealing with powerful economic forces, and they don't care. And they don't care what it's called. If they see everyone's moving to something, they'll move there too. And it started with climate change and the oil companies, and they knew before the rest of us did that this was real, but they saw this wasn't going to go well, so they said, we want to sit at the table. And it set the whole climate movement back by 20 years because ExxonMobil was at the table, and they said, we got a voluntary program, we're going to fix it. So, and they weren't going to fix it. They were just distracting us. So I think that we need to constantly do things like this and become more aware and start to organize. I'm not into one massive organization, but start to come together and speak up for what we believe in. Joel is kind of bulletproof from this. There's not going to be a fake Joel, right? Joel is Joel. Joel is Joel's brand, but we need to replicate this a million times. And when we do that, there's going to be an opportunity.
Can Monsanto help us clone him? Is that what you're Is that what you mean by replicate?
When I think about where Dave, you or folks like my parents started, it almost felt like there was more energy in the movement then, and now we're beginning to re-energize. But there was this point in time where it was really easy to get organic food at the supermarket. We didn't think twice about it, sort of like 10 years ago. And where these urgent issues that were super urgent in the 1990s and even 80s, we kind of went to sleep between 2000 and 2020. And all of a sudden, here we are today on the precipice of several types of disasters: social, climatic, and health. And the only solution is and now in both liberal and even somewhat, mainstream conservative mindsets, we are addicted to the idea that somehow our government has a structure that if we vote for the right people, it's going to fix itself. And we're beyond that. We're at a point where it's all of us in our communities working together in what we need. And creating bilateral relationships with your producers of food or those who are providing you services. And even in myself, not looking at, do I need to travel somewhere for a conference or to a farm that's cool there? No, I need to come back to Hillsdale, where I was born, and pick up what was already started. And it's a time to really reflect that, because we say they a lot. And we have to remember that a lot of they is in ourselves. And we have to overcome that and make direct connections again and buy our food from people like Joel and make sure that we participate and listen to people like Dave. And that we are there at the table again, because we went to sleep for a while because all the things we thought were good looked accessible, and it's not that easy right now.
Well, I think that a lot of this just reflects the natural evolution of the sincere start of trying to fix something that's wrong, and I try to make a point to never assume that anybody's intent is wrong, even people who I violently disagree with. Even Monsanto, I think their intent is absolutely good. They're trying to, they look at their website, we're feeding the world, and they say people like me just want half the world to starve to death, But I have to even give that to them because from their paradigm, their intent is good. To me, that one of the biggest problems gets to when we try to solve the problem at a mega scale. Wendell Berry talks about this. The Chinese have a saying: if you sweep in front of your own house, if everybody sweeps in front of their own doorstep, the whole world would be clean. And Wendell Berry talks about there are no big problems. There are no global problems. They're actually just local problems. And the problem as a culture, as we become more socialistic and look to the federal government for solutions to these things instead of states and local, we have abandoned the 50-state experiment and local autonomy, and we've arrogated all these things that were supposed to be a kind of Wild West among states. We're going to let people butcher chickens in the backyard and sell them to the neighbors. We're not going to let anybody butcher chickens in the backyard. So, you can have all these experiments going on simultaneously, and that's the way you actually come up with what eventually works. But when everything is arrogated at the federal level, it's a winner-take-all. The stakes are so high. And that's one of the reasons we're so partisan, I think, now, is because it's a winner-take-all game.
So certain. Go for it.
Like when I go to Virginia,
give me 5 seconds here. So circling back to the Monsanto, your heart's in the right place. Yeah. Do you say but you have a bad strategy?
Yes.
Yeah, because last night, Elizabeth, you were talking about instead of feeding the world, how can the world feed itself? Did I understand that? Or
Yes, that's the right question.
We're really suffering right now from deficit thinking. Solving problems, Joel, might be a great thing to you, but to me, it's deficit thinking. We need to be thinking about where it is we want to be heading, not this stuff we want to be leaving behind if we put all of our attention on everything that's destructive to come up with a solution to move us forward. That's planning the roadmap to our future, meaning that if we solve our problems and look down, our problems are literally determining our future because our solutions are based upon our problems. What we need to be doing is thinking about where it is we want to go. What is the food system we want to see? What is the system of leadership? What's the system of government? Yes, we know that there's a weakness in it, but okay, we can address the weakness by creating a stronger, better, designing some system that does work. We can argue that government is codifying everything wrong. Government's doing stuff. Government is made up of many, many individual people at many levels, at a local level, which can be as corrupt as a federal level, and my family has experienced that on every level, and it can be as corrupt as anything. It's about the people you elect and then the conversations you have with them. So when my mother almost died when I was around 5 years old, we joined Compassion in World Farming in London, and they started and they had lobby days. So from the age of 8, 9, 10, I was lobbying Parliament. I was taught that government isn't this thing, this megalith that maybe if you think about voting, you vote for a representative and you let them sit in their ivory tower and dictate whatever. No, they are people then that you communicate with. And if our community doesn't communicate with government, what do you think we're going to get? We're going to get more of whatever other people are communicating with. So I've been the Director of Government Affairs at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, looking at the prevention and reversal of disease through plant-based nutrition, been opening the conversations there about how can we really look at holistic health and nutrition and its role in healing and also in disease. But then I worked and people who are nutritionists really care about what people eat, but don't necessarily think about too much about how food is produced. So I moved to the Centre for Food Safety, where I was the Director of Policy at the Centre for Food Safety. And we cared about drugs in meat, pollinator protection, GMO labelling, all of those kinds of things. But we have a blind spot thinking about, well, what about farmer economics? How do we make this system viable? How is it that our farmers really have the choice to be doing the right thing and then having the access to the markets in order to be able to aggregate their commodities and their produce and get to markets in an efficient way that isn't having one farmer or two farmers on a small patch doing every single job that a big big mega company has, you know, a whole full departments doing. So how do we put the structures in place? And we need people who really understand the way that the full systems are working. And the only way that our leaders, whether they are ourselves or local representatives or at the federal level, get to that point is by us coming together and communicating effectively with them. And yeah, sure enough, power is a corruptive force. And when people like the term regenerative, they're going to jump on the bandwagon, which is why when I was on the board of the Rodale Institute, we worked on looking at the regenerative organic agriculture certification, which has been very contentious within the organic space, but we wanted to show organic isn't just the absence of nasty things. It also needs to be the presence of something else. Appropriate scale, workers' rights, animal welfare, soil health, all of these things coming together, full supply chain, assessing what a company is actually doing and what a farm is doing or a product that can be certified. So we kept the organic standard as the baseline at the federal level, but then we added all the things that we saw that needed to come to that. And I'm really excited now as I see more alerts coming in that there are regenerative organic agriculture certified products now coming on. I saw there was coffee the other day, and Nature's Path have their oatmeal. You know, it's starting to come online, and that is an opportunity for us. Not necessarily to say everybody has to do all of these things, but here's a roadmap. If you're thinking of putting together a company, or if you're thinking of becoming a farmer, you need to be considering all of these things. And what can you pick and choose to make the best system that's appropriate for you and your bioregion and your customers?
How is that different than the Real Organic Project? Are there differences there? Mm-hmm. What are they?
We're good friends. We are. You know,
I want to know from my own education here.
Are that regenerative organic certification was started by enlightened corporations. Real Organic Project is completely farmer-led. They've got about 35 farms certified in the U.S. We got 1,100. It's very hard to go through the ROC. It's called ROC, R-O-C, certification. It is a very serious undertaking. Honestly, when we started, we might have just done it together, but the standards at that time were really no-till for regenerative organic, and none of our farmers believed in that. Mm-hmm. So we said, we love you, but we're going to do this separately. But we're good friends, seriously. Okay. David Bronner came to our first board meeting and flew across the country to it. You know, we're all working on the same thing.
And
we're all working in the same direction.
It's helping move forward. So when they were putting together those standards, they knew full well it's very unlikely that people are going to be able to satisfy all of that and become gold or platinum standard. But this is a pathway. This is something to aspire to potentially, and it's the beginning of a next level of conversation. So it's like all of us coming together to be able to shift things and shift conversations.
Yeah. Abby, I got a question for you. Can I ask you a difficult question in front of the entire world?
Yeah.
Is that okay? What? Can I ask you if I can ask you a difficult question? Weird. What would you do if you were Amos Miller?
Oh my.
In 3 weeks, he has to decide whether or not he's gonna go to jail or pay a fine or stop farming or.
Oh my, that's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know.
He doesn't either, by the way. When I was at his house, I said, Amos, what are you going to do in a few weeks? He said, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
He said, I'm taking it one day at a time.
Right.
And, there's a part of me, yes?
Yeah, what? No, I mean, when you were talking about him before, it struck me that there needs to be some collective action.
Yeah.
To get back to.
Now hold on, because this is a good question. I'm not picking on you, Abby. I want to go around with this.
I want to get back to what you were at with me.
Yeah, I want to ask everyone that. You were just first.
Well, she's had time to think about it now.
Okay. What do you got?
Now she has a stroke of enlightenment.
Right.
Yeah, let's hear it.
No, I'm just thinking we should use this occasion to figure out what to do with him.
That would be,
For him.
Yeah.
We
should figure if.
I love what you said, because I don't think Amos, this is something he can do alone.
No,
But
I don't think he is. and-
You have to ask the right question, and it's not what should he be doing, it's what should we be doing.
Yeah.
And, whether it's him or somebody else or your representative, if they're carrying the water for a community, a constituency, an issue you care about, you better get out there under them and help lift them.
That's right.
And that's
That's
the way
right.
that we start to
Good.
move forward. So we see that there's an official government report, and we see that there's a person who can be a figurehead who's right now in, suffering from a potential verdict.
The government should be sued.
It's the perfect opportunity for something to come together. i.e. the
They should be
Well, for
sued
sure.
first.
I'd sue them.
I'd sue them.
I did sue them.
You did sue them.
They
You
sued
know how
me.
to sue them.
Yeah.
Well,
I got the senator
the
for food
government should
safety
be
to sue
sued
them.
to stop them from pursuing this with him, first of all.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that's just
I haven't
an
been
idea.
sued, but I have had, meat confiscated. I've had, my run-ins,
right.
serious run-ins. And I will tell you, he needs representation.
Right.
He needs legal counsel. He's got a court-appointed attorney who doesn't even believe in
Right,
anything that
right,
Amos is
okay.
doing.
That's step number one.
The court-appointed attorney
Representation.
thinks Amos is a jerk.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so you need a good counsel for
Right.
sure. And so there are efforts right now to go to try to get him good counsel.
There are efforts.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Institute for Justice, the Rutherford Institute in
Okay.
Charlottesville. There's definitely. I was on the phone with a newspaper, this local newspaper there in Birmingham, Pennsylvania, that's trying to support him. But the principle, But the principle here is, when you're negotiating, you have to negotiate equals. Sorry, Chris, but in the military, to go to a military analogy, if you're a colonel and you're surrendering your battalion, you don't surrender to a private on the other side. You ask them to send a colonel, right? You negotiate terms equal to equal. And the problem is, farmers, when they are dealing, when an inspector, a bureaucrat comes out, it's not equal discussion.
Right.
You've got the power, you've got an attorney, the attorney general, you've got all the power of the state, the sheriff, guns, whatever. You got all that on one side.
Right. And a farmer on the other.
I'm on this side.
Right.
And it's not equal. Right. And so I can tell you a story that happened to us. I can tell you a story that happened to us to show the power of this. We had a new health inspector come into Charlottesville and went to a restaurant. We were serving about 20 restaurants there with eggs, and they're not government inspected. But you don't have to inspect them if you don't make any claim. So we weren't claiming grade A, we weren't claiming large. All we were claiming was chicken eggs. Okay? So this new inspector came in, and she didn't, the cartons don't have the little blue USDA, USDA buzz on it. And she was new, and she told the chef, she said, you got to throw these out. These are illegal. Well, the chef called me in a panic. And of course, I immediately knew, well, if they're illegal there, they're illegal in 19 other restaurants that were in the same town. And so I said, give me the name of the inspector and give me the name of the violation, the alleged violation. So he gave those to me. I mean, I don't think I even hung up the phone. I just hit the button and immediately called Pete Kennedy at Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund that we're a member of. And I said, he answered the phone, not even a secretary, he answered. I said, Pete, here's the situation. I gave him the name and the code thing. 24 hours later, health department said, you're right, we were wrong. That was incorrect for us.
Wow.
Now that's what happens. If that had just been me trying to negotiate with them, I'd still be negotiating and have 5 ulcers and 3 cancers and be in the grave by now. But you have to have an equal to go toe to toe with the other side. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. So
what does that mean for this right now?
Right now, he needs counsel.
Well, I'd like
Good counsel. He needs good counsel.
Needs good competent counsel.
I mean, we can.
I mean, that's one thing he needs.
Right.
He probably needs more things, but that's one thing.
Well, I like how you changed the question instead of, what would you do if you were Amos? Well, I guess the answer is I make as much noise as I can, try and build my team up.
Yeah.
Because I can't handle this alone. But then the question even evolved to, well, here we are, everyone.
Yeah.
Like, what could we do, or should we do, or will we do, or are we going to do? Because this is going to happen in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Right.
So I have an idea to contribute.
Okay.
Some kind of a rally. Now, I remember when a lot of these farmers were being prosecuted for taking raw milk over state lines. We had a rally and a protest on FDA headquarters in Silver Springs, Maryland. In the very next day, the FDA made a public statement that said, well, we know the law says you can't bring raw milk over state lines for human consumption, but we're just not gonna look at it, and we're not gonna enforce it if people are doing it for themselves. With big corporations, yeah, that's fine, but if people are bringing the milk over state lines for themselves, we're just gonna kind of look the other way. So that was where we put public pressure through a rally and got them to back off. We didn't get the law changed, there wasn't like, well, let's amend the Constitution to like freedom of food or anything like that. Which is definitely a very long stretch, but it helped out the situation. Now it's been how many years later that was, and I don't think the FDA has really, they've stood good on the statement they made that day. So that's an idea I have to contribute, and I know a rally is something that,
Vernon Hirschberger?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We all went up there for him and packed the courtroom too.
Yeah, right.
I think these are the very efforts we need to make right now, and kind of hearkening back to where we're at today. We have a USDA that apparently is for a pro-climate change, let's fix climate change government. And they put out an RFP for $1 billion of grant funds called the Climate Smart Commodity Grant. Mm-hmm. Well, they just awarded the first big recipient of the Climate Smart Commodity Grant. And you know who got it? The Iowa Soybean Association, and they're going to work to show us just how corn, soy, and wheat can be climate-smart commodities. My point is, we are codifying bullshit right now. And we very much, and these examples are very public, they're very political, they're trying to win votes in the Midwest in an election year. We also just passed an Inflation Reduction Act that will buy, Chinese windmills that will put the Danish in, and then we'll send fishermen from New Bedford to fix them now and then. Anyhow, my point is, all this stuff sounds good, but it's one layer under the surface. It comes back to very much us supporting individual farms, and out of that effort, building community. And this is a legal process. It's a set of decisions we make about where we spend our money, and even if it's 10 extra minutes between the store or this dairy to buy your milk, or between your local CSA share and the store, make a choice. And right now, I think we need to make a choice to rally behind this farmer and many others as it comes up. And also to very much, to your point about rallying the FDA, we need to apply pressure to the USDA. And we need to do so very publicly. There's a farm bill coming out in 2023, which is usually an epic pork barrel package. We need to make sure that that money is going towards real causes. So it's time you can do it in your every 2 counties. You have a USDA NRCS office. You can go there. That's where you meet your local people. We have state offices, and we have Washington, D.C. We also need to very much call out the connection between the USDA and the FDA, and we have to ask some really good questions, which is, why are food and drugs administered by the same administration? That's a good question, right? And another one would be, at the USDA, why are they involved in foreign policy? And we have a lot of real questions to ask here. So it's a time to rally and get familiar with your local USDA offices. Go ask questions there. See if there are any good programs, and if there are, apply for them. And show that there's demand for the right part, little parts of corners of USDA like NRCS, and that you're looking at it. This is something that to Elizabeth's point, none of us choose to participate or put pressure on the USDA, and we have to at all levels right now. Or otherwise, they're going to make a set of bad decisions for us, which they're doing so on a daily basis.
There comes a point, though. I mean, for the record, I don't even know where the USDA office, and I don't go there and get any grants. They stole it from somebody else. it's not my prerogative to take that money because they stole it from somebody else. But and that's my position. I would agree to disagree there. But in the big scheme of things, I don't have time to go running around. They take half of my income in taxes. I gotta earn enough money to pay half my income in taxes. So I don't have time to go make phone calls to bureaucrats and run around to rallies. And I'm just.
I think
that's a big weapon, though.
What I want to do is get another million farmers doing this, and let's.
I think my point is
let's just circumvent it and not try to change the system. Make a parallel universe. Forget that universe.
I'm speaking to the audience of leaders.
A parallel political body that is defined by a declaration of independence from corporate agriculture. And invite people to redirect some of their tax money into that new political body. And then we can start to, form coalitions and self-organize within that to redistribute some of that money into a regenerative, a much more powerful regenerative.
You mean I get to tell the government where my tax money goes?
Well, they don't want you to think that, but I think that's kind of the basis of the basis of our country was formed out of that moniker, no taxation without representation. I'm not represented by Monsanto. But right now Monsanto is dictating where my tax dollars are going right now in the USDA. Kiss the Ground right now, to their credit, is trying to do some of the work to lobby Tom Vilsack to start recognizing regenerative agriculture, which is, that work has to be done. But, to put my independent hat on, it's like, I feel like, we need to get a little bit more radical than that, because we're at, 12 midnight right now.
That was the word. That was the word. When I was introducing everyone,
That's right.
That was the word. When I was introducing everyone, I said, there's a word, I couldn't remember it. Abby said, this is going to be a radical farm.
A radical gathering. A radical discussion.
Radical discussion.
We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Something like that needs to be created, and we also need to be addressing the structures that are in place that are failing us, whilst also strengthening the incredible systems that are there and the communities that are there. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And we all have different skills, and we all have different eyes and perceptions and the ability to be able to enter into different communities, different conversations. We all have a place here. And so if we can really leverage that, and people take, me switching the question, not what he's going to do, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? That's what we need to be doing. It's not about them, it's about us. So let's empower ourselves. We're under this, this yoke of nonsense at the moment. The world is breaking. Our psychology is breaking. Our emotions are breaking. Everybody's anxious. Our news is full of desperate stories. We need to be shifting that, and we do that by doing it.
So Joel, are you saying work on building up market demand and producing food, and kind of sidestep and just kind of forget about the government, and just kind of build up like what happened with Uber? People just people wanted Uber, and then all the taxi, the law said no, this said no, and it just kind of, they couldn't stop it. It just grew too fast.
It's time to Uberize the food system. It's time to Uberize the food system.
That's not good either.
No, he's not.
He's not talking about Uber Eats.
The good Uber.
The concept of.
I'm just saying, or Airbnb it, or whatever you want to call it. The point is that this bottom up came because of the real-time ease of monitoring through the internet. You can rate your driver and you can rate your passenger.
Right.
And if I'm a crummy passenger, I won't get picked up, and if I'm a crummy driver, I won't get any passenger. And
good system.
500 years ago, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker were at a scale. We're at a scale. They lived in the village, right? The village had the butcher, baker, candlestick maker. Everybody knew
Accountability.
Yes, accountability. So everybody knew who the good one was, who slapped his wife around, everybody knew who they were.
That's the way.
But in industrialization, the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker grew so big, they got behind razor wire, no trespassing zones, and security checkpoints, and people were looking, what's going on in that fence? So they asked for a government oversight that was comparable, that was an industrial scale, to oversight the industrial scale butcher, baker, and candlestick maker.
To replace the normal, regular oversight.
To replace the butcher, baker, candlestick maker of the village 500 years ago.
Right.
Okay? Now, with the internet, it has completely democratized the access to accountability and information to where we now have a global accountability to a butcher, baker, candlestick maker.
Yep.
And so when I say Uberize or Airbnb the food system, I'm saying let's use the power of the democratized monitoring system through the internet that creates a platform in which you can get into a car with a guy that you don't trust, because there is a platform of accountability that built up, that vetted him into that system. And so today, if we had Uberized the system and you got bad milk from somebody, that farm would be out of business.
Right.
If you got a bad chicken, that farm would be out of business because it would get negative stars or whatever.
That's enough.
Yeah, and that's absolutely enough. And you know what?
Right.
If that scares you to death, then go to the Walmart and get the government chicken. That's fine. All right. If that scares you, go to the government, get the government chicken. If that scares you for Uber, then go down to New York and get a yellow cab or whatever it is. Okay. That. Why can't we have parallel universes so that the folk, those of us who want to opt out, who want to take the road less traveled, walk to the beat of a different drummer, so that we aren't pressed through the same compliance regimen that the scaredy cats are.
Here's the problem. The big guys can't bear the existence of the little guys.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
And the fact.
Yes, and the protective structure. I mean, I was one time I was in Richmond testifying at a Senate hearing on this issue on food freedom, and the head of Virginia Meat and Poultry Inspection, during a break, he pulls me aside and he said, Joel, if we gave people food choice, we couldn't build enough hospitals fast enough for all the sick people. That, I kid you not, I'm quoting verbatim.
He was serious.
He was absolutely serious. My position is state, federal. What if our county wanted to have a food sovereignty and we wanted to have a free-for-all and say, if you can make pot pies in your kitchen and a neighbor wants it, you can sell it, okay? Or whatever, butcher a chicken, make canned green beans, okay? What if our county wanted to try an experiment?
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. They don't want.
Worst case scenario, a few people get sick, and we quit.
Right.
But we're on a local level. It's a community level. It's a scale that doesn't impinge, 5-state recall. Okay,
Listen.
and we can do it on a local level. But you see, the powers that be can't even abide an experiment like that on a local level.
No, they can't. They cannot tolerate it.
They can't tolerate it.
The raw milk story is the story of small farms not being allowed.
Yes.
Because they cannot stand them. They won't stand them. So the question is, what are we to do with that fact?
We have to circumvent.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
But
we have tools to do that now.
Yeah.
And that, right now, I mean, the technologies that have emerged in parallel with all of the corporate technologies are not being adequately used to empower the creation of this new food movement. And, I think...
What kind of
What do you mean?
technology?
Well, I'm talking about blockchain. Like, blockchain is a parallel technology that allows people to create new economies, new nation states, it's a sandbox for rebuilding new socioeconomic systems. Now, I don't think it has all the answers, but I do think that it is a sandbox that too few people have gotten into, because it allows for individuals to claim sovereignty in a new frontier, which is cyberspace, because cyberspace is a non-physical domain. You know?
Okay.
And then the Electronic Frontier Foundation is an organization that was trying to assert sovereignty, you know, individual and community sovereignty in the internet. Now that's a whole other can of worms.
We have to be really creative and also really careful, and also very pragmatic as well. So we do have to deal with the real world and real government structures and real power and real communities, and whilst looking at what the opportunity is available in cyberspace and that. But when we have gone down this channel of the mechanization of life, you know, the distraction of our children with screens. We're taking people out of the community and shoving them in their bedrooms with a television or whatever it might be. One of the amazing things for us to do is to bring the community back together again. COVID set us all apart. We were all locked in our houses. We were all forbidden to do whatever. It's an opportunity for us now to get back together and to create real physical community. If we can organize online, if we can create these other structures, great, but then let's make them real in the real world and help people to get back into the ecology of being and into the ecology of the environment and the togetherness.
I'd like to add to that point. To our left is Dave, and in 4 years, Dave has brought the equivalent of a whole food system, every type of food you can imagine, from 1,100 farms, who all believe in what we're talking about. And then Dave communicates to the people who eat that food. And a lot of these farmers is sort of getting a shield from the USDA or getting sort of the bypass. And to Elizabeth, I don't want people to think I'm all for participating with the USDA. It's more about calling them out while at the same time exercising your individual rights to liberty to eat what you want from where you want.
They're directing
and I
funds
think
that we are paying.
Yeah, I feel someone who's walking. And I think we should all be looking at what Dave's doing with Real Organic Project as a wonderful way of how that line's being walked, where pressure is being applied in a public way to a government agency that's really messing up what started out as something that had some potential, and speaking to eaters, and they're now conform a community around.
As opposed to
I eat real organic
consumers,
food.
by the way.
And there's a key question of scale that's also addressed in this, and I just think we should all really pay attention to that the solutions, many of them are in progress, and some of them are catching speed. And it's really been interesting to watch the Real Organic Project adapt to the scale of 1 acre or a farm like Lady Moon Farm, who grows 1,000 acres of vegetables in 3 states to make sure that we can have produce year-round on an East Coast shelf, and shows that model. And I still find it a completely acceptable scale. So I think that there's a beautiful balance of that individual choice of what you eat and supporting the farm it comes from, while also calling out the fallacies of composition in a federal model of the USDA label. And I just wanted to thank you for really those efforts.
Thank you.
How do we circle back here? Amos could be in jail in 21 days. Like, how do we circle back to? I mean,
So what we could possibly
like,
do.
what can we do?
Right.
Or I know something I could do. I can organize a rally. That's something I could do. Would anyone want to go to that?
I'd go to the rally.
Would you go to that?
You go there? Okay.
I think that's a lot.
Dave, are you in?
I'm not quite positive if I'm ready to go back to Pennsylvania, but
Well, we don't know where it's going to be.
oh, well, there you go.
Well, there wouldn't be much of a point in having it on his farm, right?
Right.
We want to kind of make the noise on their doorstep, wherever it is.
Right.
Yeah. I think.
Does that plan sound good, Joel?
Absolutely, sounds
Okay.
great. All right, but I want to go back to, because Chris really hit something that's. I really appreciate this, and I'm not a cryptocurrency. I don't even know. I don't even have a smartphone. Okay, so I'm still a flip phone. I'm a Luddite. All right.
Yeah.
But you alluded to something, Chris, that I think is really powerful, and that is to use the technology that allows us to democratize decision making. I'll give you an example. The last time I was in the UK, Great Britain, I met with some slaughterhouse people, and they were and the inspection service in the UK was using artificial intelligence, AI, all these bacterial pathogens on like a carcass in a slaughterhouse emit infrared signals, which can be read by an infrared camera. So you can take a lamb carcass, a sheep carcass, okay, a cow carcass hanging up, and you can take these infrared pictures, and Campylobacter shows up green, and Listeria shows up blue, and, all right. You can tune your infrared like a radio frequency. Okay, you can. And so the beauty of this is that they were actually moving away from poke and sniff, and which is all. As soon as you have an inspector in there, things become political.
Yeah.
Because, well, how dirty is dirty? And I want the room to be green, not blue. And I mean, I own a slaughterhouse. I know. I mean, the rules are that thick. They're subjective. What does a clean table mean? And so this ability to use AI to take empirical science and infrared check it. There's no politics, no inspector. The camera doesn't even need a bathroom. It doesn't need a break room. Now suddenly we just define it by empirical residue, and if I can do it clean in my home kitchen,
Right.
Who cares?
Of course.
If it's clean, it's clean. Take the politics, the subjectivity out of it. And I went to actually a federal inspector that I knew and broached this with him when I came back from the UK. He listened to me. He says, "Wow, that would absolutely work." And he said, "But then I'd be out of a job." No, I'd be opposed to that. and so you realize at the end of the day, the Food Safety Inspection Service is a big jobs program.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if maybe Ben could share some of the ways in which he's using technology.
I'd just like to say that's really what we focus on at Hudson Carbon is how to accurately measure. And it's taken us a lot down the road of you can use satellite imagery and drone imagery in really interesting ways. And one example I'd like to give was we created a tillage index based upon NDVI. And what we found is that no-till fields that get sprayed down after the end of the crop where everything was dead,
With
and a
Roundup.
field with Roundup,
With Roundup.
and a field that was dead from tillage often showed the same signal because we were actually reading a vegetation index. Whereas a field that was quickly tilled and a cover crop was planted versus the no-till field showed healthy vegetation, sequestering carbon, likely to be infiltrating water. And then you can also use topographical models to understand how water collects coming off different types of fields and how they're managed. And again, that's a very objective measure. So instead of creating a long list of a book of USDA rules and questions to answer with inspectors, and by the way, Planet, their satellites take images of the whole world every day. And we can watch what's happening and respond to it. So if we create the rules about objective measures based on empirical science, we're in great shape. But what's got us here today is the opposite of that. Monsanto only had to show 2 out of 7 studies on glyphosate to prove that it was healthy. 5 showed it was unhealthy. They found 2 that looked all right, got it through. So a whole system based on this system we live on to this point, and where Chris is going back to Chris's point, is we can actually use technology, and we're now the ability to use technology in a free way is also being suppressed, by the way, because then we might end up at a solution like this, and that is not in the interest of the big players who can't stand to see small ones with good ideas.
Yeah, you opened the table with the question about food freedom, but information freedom is really, I think, our greatest challenge now.
And how we share that to connection. All these issues become so interconnected.
That's a perfect time that just like brings right in. So if anyone doesn't know, Dell has an amazing not-for-profit ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network. And, talking about information, like how do we get information out? This guy's like the rebel journalist out there helping getting information out. And part of what we're going to do is I want to bring Dell up to the table right now. He's also the host of the High Wire, so we can get some of his input too. He'll be here soon. Dell, you've heard all this. Are you bursting at the seams to say anything?
Well, I mean, it's super intriguing, and you are all dealing with a very, a complex issue that we're watching. But I would say, for me, sitting here, that most of the people in this room are consumers. No matter how many people have their own farms here, maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, not.
Okay, so I think part of the discussion that needs to be had is, as consumers, what can we do? What is our power to shift this? You're all trying to figure out, you're working on your own labeling systems in a way that we can see it. But we always hear we vote with our dollars, and so how is it I use my dollars as a consumer to help advance, this cause of, food integrity and sovereignty? I also think that, I think you mentioned we're at the midnight hour. A lot of this is very long-term thinking, and it feels like there's a tidal wave of potential food shortages that could be, literally around the corner. Where, we just watched a lockdown happen. We just watched our nation change in a way that we never thought was possible, and it did it almost within weeks. It yanked the rug right out from under us. And so I think there's an ability right now with our society to get people to move very quickly, because we recognize that things can shift very quickly now. And so I would just be interested in, really understanding, like, when I go shopping, is it important, when it comes to the word organic? When I go to Walmart, is it more important that I buy organic at Walmart to show that larger corporate structure that organic matters? Does that go anywhere?
It's better not to go to Walmart.
Or is it better to be at a farmer's market, direct with my farmer, but nobody in the system is seeing that interaction, right? Are we going to be smarter that we just stay small and interacting with each other, or do we need to be grandstanding with the decisions that we're making? Does that question make sense?
I think if you put your money where you think you most want it to be, like, so if you go to the farmer's market, you go to the CSA, whatever, no, actually, they do notice that. They are watching it very carefully,
okay,
and they're very scared. So if that grows, it won't be laughed off at all. I would say one thing: we don't just vote with our dollars; we vote with our votes too. Mm-hmm. If we put, better politicians in, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. Who's running the USDA makes a difference. Of course, Vilsack was not a good choice, but it didn't have to be that way. So, but yeah, I'm sorry, you were asking about eaters.
No.
Okay, like, I'm speaking for 1,100 farmers, and far more than that. They're coming. But it's millions of eaters.
Right.
If we could get, if we could get 50 people to go into every store in the country and ask, are these organic eggs come from pasture-raised chickens? Do these organic tomatoes, are they grown in the soil? Literally overnight, we win. The National Organic Program.
No one even knows how to answer that question. So they're going to say what?
Yes, they are. They'll say what? They won't know even what hydroponic means. I know I've asked this question a lot.
Yeah.
Right? They won't know. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. And they'll ask, what does that mean? And I'll explain it. And they go, that's not right. And you go, I love this person. Okay.
I think it goes beyond that. I think we need to go and reestablish the relationship with our food, and even go beyond the supermarket. And there's got to be like a certain amount of food that we're buying direct from farms. If you're not buying food direct from a farm, at least some of your food, I think you just don't get it. To some degree, you haven't fully synthesized it or digested.
That's fine if you live in a community where there's farms. But most people don't live in a community.
Well, now you can get it on your doorstep through the UPS. That's direct from a farm.
Yeah, but farmers can deliver. There could be systems in place. There could be.
That's where rebuilding the fabric of the food system and really looking at supply chains and looking at how we have fragmented the ability to actually serve the major population with appropriately produced food. Yeah. And we need to look at the infrastructure that is there and the infrastructure that's not there. Joel says he has an abattoir that he owns. There are very few independent abattoirs. I'm a vegan talking about this, but there's very few independent abattoirs. So that's one thing. We need to look at, well, how do local farms start to aggregate so that they can then service a large order, so that they can service a large population, where a farmer isn't having to do 1,000 jobs, including growing and marketing and packing and transporting and all that. How do we make it easier? And that's the opportunity for all the designers in the community to be able to think in wherever we are. And one of the things I'm working... System designers, that's what I'm, and architects of the future, what is it that we need to be putting in place? And then how do we reach the consumer? How do we teach the consumer? Is it through an advocacy organization? Is it through what we're doing now? One of the things I'm working on is a new show for PBS. So it's called Wild Foods. And we're showing people where nature is producing food, how nature feeds herself, and then through each episode looking at the domestication of the food supply all the way through to having a lovely meal cooked by an amazing chef. But with the question of, well, how do we then rewild our food system? How do we bring the principles of nature back in? That show will reach perhaps 1.2 million people per episode. That's a potential opportunity for us to reach those people and then get them to do something. So as a community, we've got all these tools in our toolbox, and sort of to come together and really work together, because none of us can do it as individuals, but we can all do great
Well, the
things.
fact is, we didn't get where we are overnight, and we won't get out of where we are overnight. There is a time, Paul Harvey, the great news commentator Paul Harvey used to say, societal evolution is agonizingly gradual.
And I think we've landed at a time when a lot of the things that work we are aware of, and humanity doesn't move until there's real scarcity or a real problem.
That's right.
And we now have both. And we're also several generations away from the disconnect of us to our food. And I travel a good bit, especially a lot to Haiti, and I visit a few little places in Haiti. It's pretty obliterated now, where people would the meat for the day was who killed a cow that day. There's no refrigeration, so that cow would very quickly get to 100 people, and it would be eaten that day. It wouldn't go bad, and it was safe and fresh. And then you could go to... And American imported food was rapidly taking over, and now it has, and there's actually just no beef left in the country. So, and there's real scarcity there. We in America, we got to the point where we had beef the whole time because we had plenty of resources to live off of. But we're 3-4 generations away from knowing, oh, that's the person who has the cow, and I'll go get meat from them. So to Elizabeth's point, probably 80% of the American population just doesn't have access to someone who grows food, wouldn't know where to start.
Couldn't we start at a farmer's market?
We could, but there's places, if you go just down to Hudson, and in the poor part of town doesn't get 7 blocks up to the farmer's market. And so we really have to get to people, and I think that as hard as it is to hear, I think the point is it has been gradual, and I think it's going to be fast, because we're right around the corner, maybe even this winter with the Colorado River going off, from there not being much produce on the shelves. So we're going to have to very quickly, all of us, disseminate information to people about food, and it might become a more pressing issue again. We're going to go from a point to where some countries that didn't do it totally wrong, food is actually expensive. If you live in Italy or France, food's expensive, but therefore most of your food comes from not too far away because those farmers never had to go out of business. And so we're in a very complex time, and I'm just trying to explain more than provide an answer. And that we are facing, and everywhere in the world, the food issues are.
Can you just explain the Colorado River thing? Because I've heard you say it twice, and I don't think a lot of us know what you mean.
So the Colorado River is so low on water that the federal government has given the states, as of 2 weeks ago, they had 60 days to reduce their water usage by 25 to 33%, or it was just going to naturally be shut off for them because that's the level of the water. So they're going to choose toilets and showers over likely Yuma, Arizona, and Southern California, the places that grow all of your produce all winter, even your organic stuff, whether it's organic or the Dole romaine. You might want to put your romaine in your greenhouse this fall. So we're at a very rapid time of change, and I think these changes will cause us to really rethink So that this conversation becomes very relevant it is of course very relevant, has been to all of our lives, but we're at the edge of a time where the idea of some things not being there, you can't blame the supply. Oh, it's the supply chain. Well, you might have to start saying, which will be fundamentally different, oh, the land isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
The Chinese have a saying, plenty of food, many problems, no food, one problem.
Yeah. And now that it's becoming a problem, I think that people of all types will, just by nature of necessity, have to think about it. And the solutions are demonstrated, and it's a time for those demonstrated solutions to take power, and I think they will by necessity. And although that's not going to be a pretty process,
That's right.
with a smooth transition.
It's going to be rough. I've been really confused for a while about, are things getting better, or are they getting worse? And I see the growth of all the small farms of the Northeast. That's where I'm aware of it. And I see this amazing kind of local food system. And at the same time, I see that even in Vermont, the actual percentage of food grown in Vermont that Vermonters eat is still very small. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it's coming from California and Mexico now. And I asked Michael Pollan about this last year. I was interviewing him, and it was about the 10th year anniversary of Omnivore's Dilemma. Mm-hmm. I said, Michael, have things gotten better or worse? And he said, well, I think awareness has gotten much better. There's so much more thinking, sophisticated thinking about these problems, and people are talking about them. The actual food system has gotten much worse. Mm-hmm. It's much more consolidated, and I can testify to that as somebody who sells into it. And
you're talking about the food system overall.
Yeah.
Yes.
The big food system.
Like where people get their food,
right,
and who grows it. And yes, this local food system is fantastic, but it is still a very small part of where Americans get their food from.
Oh yeah, it's nascent. It's still on the lunatic fringe.
It's the lunatic fringe.
We spend, if anyone doesn't know, we spend $1.8 trillion on food every year in the 50 states.
And what do we spend on healthcare?
I don't know.
It's over 4.
But I think that's
1.8 trillion through the federal government, or
no,
just in
that's
general?
not how much the United States spends on food.
Okay, in total.
Whether you're buying it from a restaurant, a grocery store, farmer's market, and the citizens, the people visiting, everyone in the U.S., $1.8 trillion a year on food in the 50 states. And one of the things I think we need a consciousness shift, because we have this idea that food should be cheaper, faster, and it's taste, price, and convenience. That's why I eat, and we forget the idea of health. And when we start to embrace that this is my health, that this is why I'm buying this substance and putting it in my body, when we start to embrace that, all of a sudden we're not so like sticklers on the price and, oh, this one's 10 cents cheaper, I'll go for that. And there was this point in my life when I was analyzing my budget, and there was a point in my life where 75% of my money was going toward food. Wow. Now, at the time, you would look at my car and you'd say that this guy's just beyond poverty because my car is a $2,000 car, or clothes all secondhand. But if you open my refrigerator, you'd think this guy was making $500,000 a year just because I prioritized. There was basically, I was going to sell, pawn, beg, borrow, steal, whatever you want to call it, to get healthy food. Maybe not the steal part, but you kind of get the point, right? And so one of the consciousness shifts I think that needs to happen to help support the farmers financially in the food system, this healthier food system, is we got to be willing to covenant food to the point where we're not so stingy on the price. We're willing to pay what the farmers need to be able to run their farm as a business for the long term.
I wanted to speak to that issue, that one of the biggest crimes almost that this country has committed was making food cheap. Making and claiming that we should be proud. America has the cheapest food in the world. Well, it has the worst food in the world.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the cheapest anymore.
It's not the cheapest anymore.
I was in I was in England back
Yeah.
home a month or so ago, and
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what you
Yeah, okay,
provide.
they've
And
copied
now
our
it's-
model.
But it's not so much that, it's now, I feel like we're getting not good food
Yeah,
and
and,
we're being gouged for
yeah,
it.
right, okay. Maybe so, but in any case, real food, and that, let's say, organic food, has to cost what it costs. It has to, and more, to give the farmer something to live on.
But-
What
and
you're
then-
saying, that's just more of what you're saying.
And there's a place for efficiency to keep the prices low, but we don't want to turn quality,
No.
we don't want efficiency to destroy
Listen.
quality either.
Right.
All right, I'm going to ask you, I don't want to jump in here because I
Yeah.
think there's a more difficult discussion here, which is we can all sit around and talk about the greater body of society, which is where, how do people living in areas that don't have farms near them, how are they going to survive? And is it possible that we're going to waste really critical time thinking about those people that are not going to be able to acquire the situations that are going to, to survive the moments that we're in? When we think about COVID, there was a huge wake up, but it's still a small percentage of the people that woke up to what was really happening around them.
Yeah.
Some of this is triggered by, I just interviewed again a guy named Matthias Desmet, who talks about mass formation from a psychological perspective.
Right.
And I asked him at the end of the interview, and it was really fascinating, if you're aware of just the concept of what he's talking about, you have 30% in any sort of, whether it's a bad movement, Nazi Germany, that will just go along with whatever the government says and what they're told. Then there's this like 40 to 60% that sit in the middle that will simply go along, not agree with it, not believe in it, but will just do it out of
Oppose it.
compliance. And then you always have this sort of radical outside group of 15 to 30% that just never go along with the plan, tend to have strong critical thinking values and just hold the line there.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, is those that, I think when we're talking about organic food, ultimately you're talking about this radical outside group. It's not the norm. It's not what's driving the USDA. It's not what's controlling the country, but people that are really looking to create some interaction with their farmer to understand how to make that happen. But what I said to him is there, because as a journalist and I suppose an activist too, I get accused of being both. But I said, is there a tug of war? Is there a tug of war between this radical outside group and the group that, are leading us in the wrong direction over the center, right? And he said to me, and this is his perspective, but it's really stuck with me, no. There's no advantage. The thinking about the larger whole is always going to be problematic. What has to happen is that group that truly have the truth have just got to stand in that, live in that, experience that, and represent that in every space that they can. And ultimately, there will be huge mass destruction to the larger group. They're going to really implode and have issues, but the future is going to be determined by those who really stood steadfast in truth and integrity and carried that. And I wonder if we waste too much energy thinking about, when we say the they, we're always saying the they, I mean the consumer they, not necessarily the they that's controlling us, but the consumer they. We're always talking down. It really annoys me wherever you're at with the COVID thing. Well, how many people went along? They all went along. They didn't all go along with it. There was a huge wake-up moment. There's a huge transfer happening here, but we keep focusing on this larger group that's not moving. And I wonder, is there in these moments to say, you know what, I'm sorry for those that live in places that don't have farms, and that's going to have its issue. I'm sorry for those that are going to end up dying from Captain Crunch, but our job right now is to get all of these farms that potentially could struggle, that have an audience that has just woke up to the world we are living in, and say all we need to do is get these two groups to start working with each other, and screw the rest of the country, screw the rest of the world. That representation, I mean, it's hard, right? We're going to let people die, but aren't we going to move faster if we focus on the group that's listening and then let them be a representation to those from the outside that are slowly waking up saying, I think I want to be on that team,
That's why.
I think that a key thing to look at, though, is I agree with that, and I've recently, this is the first time I've sat around a table or spoken publicly in a long time, because I've been reflecting on how to get back to it and make food here or make something here that gets to people here in a community. Where that's a difficult one for me, though, is where I agree there's a mass in any culture, any place of resistance, and there's a radical part that will survive. But we as a country are imposing, we have more power over other countries, and we're imposing ourselves so strongly that a lot of that radical group is completely under the thumb. And a lot of the people who have the real keys to solve a lot of this that we're talking aren't just here in America, they're all over the world. And what we're doing to them doesn't even allow that radical group to survive. We are still lucky enough to be able to be libertarians and survive in America and find that path, but in some places we can't. So I think we have to find a fine line of being individualistic, serving our community, and being local, but not forgetting that there are other communities of radical, like-minded individuals in other places who we need to support and look at, that they actually can help us survive if we help them survive. But I agree with you that in terms of a mass psychology, you know, we're never going to get all Americans to agree on one thing, but there are certainly people who have critical examples for us around the world that are much further to the edge than us, and we need them as much as they need us, and they are part of our radical cohort as well. And I just wanted to make that point because what you said really resonates to me because it's a process I've gone through recently, but I still can't let go of, you know, friends I've had in other places.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I've been accused of preaching to the choir, like, aren't you just preaching to the choir? I go, it's a huge choir.
Right.
Like, if we talk to each other and get excited and come together, because if we don't, we get very isolated and depressed, which is kind of modern industrial agriculture. Right. It's very isolated. Everything is isolated. So I think that it's fine to preach to the choir, but I also agree with Ben, which is that I don't think there's any us and them anymore. It's just us. It's like the world, nobody gets away. We're too connected. You know, what happens in Brazil does actually literally impact my kids. And so we can't just talk to the choir. We also have to pay attention to how do we open this message and welcome other people who might be uncomfortable with it. And you know, talking about the USDA, they are aggressively attacking the Farm to Fork initiative in the EU, which is trying to take the EU to 25% of their land being certified organic and a 50% reduction in pesticides. Now that is a radical regime. You know, that is a radical plan, and Vilsack and company hate it.
Wow. Oh, they hate it.
They hate it.
Of course.
So we need to raise a ruckus and say, you know, we don't all feel that way.
Right. Yep.
Because that is the story that gets put out there.
Yeah.
Well, we need to grow food and supply.
Well, I'm confused which side of that you're on. I mean, so we should be pushing that radical change in Europe, or we should not?
We should support it. We don't have to push it. They're doing it. We just have to stop blocking it. Yeah.
When you say we, but who's who's blocking it? You don't mean
Thomas Vilsack.
Okay,
USDA.
he's not we.
And yet he is. Right? That's my point. We're all connected here, and I can say, well, it's not my government, whatever, but it is actually operating on my tax money.
Okay, so
what do you do?
Right? How are we going to stop him from blocking it? I mean, what are you meaning?
Well, I'm a real pain in his ass.
Yeah. Okay, you are a pain. All right, you're a pain in his ass.
I complain loudly about it.
I think there's a dichotomy, though. We have to act together, to Dell's point, immediately. And form a community that you think, who do I want on my team?
Right, yeah.
You know, where's my food locker? Where's my water? Who's my team? Who's in my band? And you're going to do that. At the same time, you know, if another band needs help, or if we, to today's point, the Brazilian rainforest goes down, it might even be impossible to farm the way we want to here. So we have we have radical people in Brazil trying to save that and stop that from happening.
We have reasonable people.
And there are indigenous people who have been doing that for all of us, and guerrilla groups who kept, you know, in Colombia, who kept that rainforest standing for a long time. Not saying you have to support them directly, but we have to understand that there are radical groups all around the world, and our fabric needs communication. At the same time, our focus and action needs to be spending our money with people we know and building our teams that we want to be on.
Do you think we're ready to open this to the public, to the community here for discussion? For questions, discussions, whatever?
Vote for that. Yeah.
I would just add to Dell's point, I think this is why loyalty points work.
Yeah.
This is why loyalty points work. Basically, you're saying, build the 20% that's 80% of the movement, and let the 80% that doesn't know about it yet, let them go and focus on loyalty points. Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and talked about the sphere of influence. And I love it. He drew this three concentric circles. One is your sphere of influence, and then the next one is farther out, and then the next one is things that you can't do anything about, that you can't really do anything about.
Yeah.
And most of us spend most of our lives out on the outer ring, protesting, writing letters, whatever, things that we can't do anything about. And his point is that if you focus on the center, things that you can influence, your overall influence grows more than if you spend your time on the outer ring of things that you can't influence.
So there is an opportunity perhaps to take some of the
Can you talk louder?
contention out of what was said and take the nuggets of what was meant. And there's an organizational development approach called appreciative inquiry. It's a strengths-based organizational development. So I'd alluded to it before, where it's not that you ignore the problems, you just let the problems sit. And you work on the strengths, you work on what you're trying to create, but you also work to strengthen the strengths. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's strengthen the strengths. So not the weak people fall away, but the weakness in the system falls away. And let's work to our strengths. Let's work to the strengths of all the skills that we have. Let's work to know how you do agriculture right. What is it that we can be doing? And I think that this appreciative inquiry is a key way in which we can start to mobilize and organize our thoughts, and also all the communities out there and the organizations working on this. Because in the vernacular, everyone talks about progress is in solving problems, and progress is not in solving problems. Progress is in strengthening the strengths that you want in your society and moving the rest, so the weaknesses walk away or fall away because we've moved forward and the whole of the society gets moved. So, perhaps that can be something that we, consider as a whole body.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Does that work?
my mic. Who wants to jump in on some of this?
Well, while that line's forming, I have a bit of a sort of an analogy of what I think you just said. And I don't know if you ever played pool like billiards. It's always shocking to people that will leave the ball that's right next to the pocket and go for the harder shot, like to set up for the easier shot later. When you risk everything, to me, if you shoot the easiest ball first that's right in front of you, who knows if that ball doesn't move into the place where that hard shot becomes easy. I mean, that's sort of where I think it's at. Like, we get so heady on a strategy over the greater, bigger picture, that we're just not taking the shots that are right in front of us, not using the choir. We have choir members that are sitting in the pews and not standing up on the stage. That's ridiculous, that are ready to be a part of this. Let's make sure everybody that's ready at the moment is in action. If everyone in this room, I doubt everyone is finding the place where they're going to buy, raw milk, and I'm sure most of us are near it, but we're not making that effort. We're not talking about how to make that happen. What difference do we make if we become active with the individuals that are waking up right now and ready to do something?
Right. That's right.
And there's a selfish act of doing what your body needs
Exactly.
first.
Be selfish.
Simply
Selfish.
choose the sovereignty of your body first, and then your mind will be free to build your team with.
Okay.
Good.
Zena.
Yes.
Name where you're from, comment, question, or what you would like to add and contribute.
I'm agronomist by profession, and I have been working for government
Louder.
from Nevada. Originally from overseas.
Louder.
They need their mics.
Something.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go.
So here is what I'm looking for help. Like you say, we all can contribute, right?
Yes.
And it's easy to talk to these people here. We can find common ground. But when I'm out there, I took a 6-month experiment in Walmart, trying to connect with those people, to tell them what is it that they're doing when they go with a cart full of crap.
Junk.
Right?
Junk.
Interesting.
Crap is
I have
good.
found that there
Junk
is
is
a
bad.
new thing among Walmart workers, and that is the stapling of the stomach. And they hear it, but they don't understand what I'm saying. How do we approach these people? How do we actually make a difference in contact with them?
I mean, I think this is the harsh, dichotomy that I'm bringing up. I think that we are wasting a lot of our energy trying to move those that are not going to be in a space to be moved, and we're all going to, it's like standing in the middle of a road. Either we all cross together, but if you're stopping me in the middle of the road, we're all going to get hit. And I think on some levels, as harsh as it may be, there is a huge group of people that are not eating, Doritos and drinking Coke and McDonald's, but don't fully know what exists here. And that conversation is going to take you one conversation. And I think we have to think of it as like an arc. If the rain is coming, we cannot be having conversations that take 5 attempts to get you to try and understand. We're living in different worlds. The people in this world right now that are waking up need to get on the arc, and they need to get on it together.
Good.
I'm arguing that I think we're wasting too much energy talking about those that will never get there. I know this is going to get printed somewhere that they just don't care about humanity. But
if I may, Dell,
Exactly.
I think just to add on to your point, I think the more we focus on creating organizations that really embody a new integrity, a new economic and governing integrity that represents the values that we stand for, rather than trying to knock on the door of a fundamentally imperial system that doesn't give a damn about what we think, that will actually catalyze a snowball effect. And I think we'll gain a lot more progress than trying to interface with, the corporate system. Yeah.
Hi there. First of all, my name's Amber Lashak. I'm from New York. I wanted to thank you guys so much because this is super inspiring. And also to thank everybody who showed up. And I just encourage, I think when you have a situation like this where there's all these lovely people, there's probably 100 people in this room, that because we have a call to action, for instance, that we get maybe everybody on a list, and if everybody here put $25 in, we could raise $3,000 right away for some legal fees, just the initial stuff. So it's like, when everybody here is here because they care, and I think it's a great opportunity to do so. So I could go find a piece of paper, I can put our names on a list, and we could organize right here, right now, start our revolution.
Good.
So thank you guys.
Great.
Good.
Hi, my name is Cherie Denard, and I'm from New Hampshire. And I agree with you. I think, I agree with Dell. If people are stupid and they don't want to wake up, you're not going to wake them up. And the other thing I want to say is that we have to understand that the lens that we're looking at, the communities and the people around, is the lens of the mass media. So the mass media is going to tell us that there are people that aren't into this. I myself, I've been an on-farm butcher for 23 years. I've been doing this for a long time. I've never gotten anybody sick, but I stay under the radar. I'm not going to go out there and say, hey, guess what I'm doing, so that they shut me down. There may be a lot more people like me. There may be a lot more people like us than we realize.
Hi, I'm Wendy from Chester, Massachusetts, and I'm going to get a little emotional. I'm going to get a little emotional right now. Yeah. I'm just really joyful to be here, but we're talking about organic, we're talking about soil health, and no one is mentioning what's going on in the sky. Okay? Yeah. It's fucking ridiculous. I mean, I listen to all the alternative podcasts. No one is talking about this. I finally saw a document called The Dimming by with Dave be able to say this because I've just been so upset about it. Thank you.
My name is Anastasia, and I live in the Berkshires, 45 minutes from here. And this question is on the nefarious forces that are going to and are already and have been cloaking themselves in the environmental movement and the crisis, the climate crisis. So I'm not saying that there isn't degradation, that it's not real, but that just to voice, that this is also happening. And my question is to Dave. I wasn't sure when you just mentioned the EU and they're pushing, I think maybe you're talking about the farm movement that just happened in the Netherlands and how they're saying they can't put down, certain...
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, or you were supporting that or not. And just to say that, some of these things that are coming out are going to look really good, like we have to put our foot down, like Newsom saying in 35 that we're not going to be able to, buy any non-electric cars anymore. And, my adopted Grammy aunt saying, oh, yes, finally, he's doing something. And I'm thinking, what about all of the people in California that are not going to be able to afford in 2035 an electric vehicle? And then they can't drive to get to work, and then they can't feed their families, and then what kind of environmental crisis is that, and getting food to people, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I wanted clarification about that, and just to give voice. Well, just, if you were like support, if that's what you meant.
I can give some context to it. I mean, there's a real issue that, reductions in nitrogen, fertilizers and things like that, and that might be a good idea, but driving these farms into organic production, is it real is the question, first of all, or is it really just destroying these farms because you're having these giant protests now in the Netherlands, Sri Lanka, farmers they're not being taught how to move in this direction, so it really looks like it could just be the destruction of farming. UK is buying farmland and just taking it off, just ending farming. So I think there's a real concern that through the description of environmentalism and organic, this word organic is an attack on farming itself around the world. And I think the question would be, are you seeing that whole picture? Because, I think that's the question.
Okay, well, I honestly don't, I know about Sri Lanka, I don't know about what's happening in Holland, so sorry, I can't answer that. The EU thing, it's their Green New Deal, and unlike the US, it passed the European Parliament. And so it was a commitment for a transition of farming and not 100% organic, although that would be ideal, but it's not what it is. It's trying to take organic to be 25% of the land. Right now in the US it's 1% of our land is certified as organic. So from our perspective it would be a huge transition. Even though 6% of our food is organic, most of it's imported. I think it's a very good proposal, and the reason it's being so contested is because what it means for the rest of the world. Basically, is the world going to go in the direction of reduced use of pesticides, or is it going to go in the direction of increased use of pesticides? And this is really a corporate battle. The U.S. is just acting as a representative of Bayer and Syngenta in this debate. The thought that somehow farmers are going to go out of business or we're all going to starve if everyone goes organic is just wrong. Of course, but there needs to be education and support to make that transition. Organic farming works, right? It works.
Yes.
It provides good food and abundant food. So it's just, but it is replacing bought-in purchases with information. And it requires an educational process to have the kind of sophisticated farming we're talking about. Joel has done a lot to try and share that understanding with a lot of small farmers. So that's what it is.
Yeah, thank you. And I just had one other point, that I don't think that organic farming is going to starve people. I'm just saying that I think that some of our food shortages and our problems are going to be engineered by the government.
in order to
Using
control.
terms that we like organic and environmental things.
I think that
things
would be a
like that.
very nice excuse. The fact is that chemical agriculture has destroyed our soils.
Yep.
And if you are going to transition to organic, you're going to have to do a heck of a lot to bring those soils back up to a healthy state. Right now, most agriculture is pushing product out of dust with chemicals. Our industrial system has killed it. So there's innovators and ways in which we can bring those soils back online, but we have to do that. We have no choice, because if we continue with this system, we're just going to get in a worse and worse state, and we will have no resilience, we'll have no food supply, period. Maybe we have 50 harvests left if we're lucky, right now.
Unplugging the chemical IV is something you do.
There's an inherent challenge to Elizabeth's point, and this kind of ties in, I think, to answer. In Holland, what's happened is the EU has set nitrous oxide reduction targets. And Holland is a very high emitter of nitrous oxide. It's also a produce breadbasket. We go to Salinas and Salinas, California, Yuma, Arizona. Europe gets a lot of their produce, especially in the off-season, from greenhouses in Holland. And it brings up a very interesting set of issues of these highly productive greenhouses in a highly populated continent that are not organic.
They're all hydroponic.
And never could be called organic. While we also have very few less and less farmers, and we have degraded soils. So all of this is a process to get to the point where you can't turn those greenhouses probably off overnight if you want to keep having tomatoes in Europe this year. However, and to Elizabeth's point, you do need to rebuild soil. And Abby and I did this actually. 3,000 acres, about 5 miles from here, we just stopped spraying glyphosate, all chemicals, all synthetics, on her father and mother's land.
Cold turkey.
Cold turkey. And that was hard, but we did it. And within about 3 or 4 years, we were back to really acceptable levels of production. So there is math, there are examples of how we do this phased transition, and to the point of government meddling, there's a massive effort against organic and continued effort to discredit it. So in Sri Lanka, they have an economic crisis, and the government couldn't afford nitrogen fertilizer. So they did a publicity stunt and said, let's go organic, when really they were just bankrupt, and they combined those two things, and now we're in a real shit show. So there's in Holland, this could be phased over time. We could come up with a 5-year plan. And in Sri Lanka, they need money, so they can actually probably get some nitrogen for a year or two and then start really transitioning people. So nothing's ever black and white, and there's always a way to get where you're going.
Name and where you're from.
My name is Gina. I'm from here in New York. I've been teaching functional nutrition at a community college for almost 20 years, and most of what you've been talking about are the things that I incorporate into my class. I like identifying problems, and then I look for solutions. It's easy to complain, but you got to do something with those complaints. I have always felt that the future of food is having a relationship with specific communities and satellite farms. So the community supports the farms support the communities. And I know what you're saying in an environment that is industrial, city, not so easy, in an urban. Joel, you'll tell me if this is wrong, but Fresh came out in 2009. If you don't know the film, get it. Joel is the rock star of that movie. I use it at the end of my semester. I use that with my students. There is one presentation of a fellow in St. Louis with 3 acres. He created an organic farm. So it can be done, but of course that takes time. In the meantime, what can you do? You can create vertical gardens in your house by hanging plastic bottles with soil in front of a window. You can teach people to do this, and we talk about it in my classes, as well as, I'm assuming, Elizabeth, you're familiar with Katrina Blair, 13 Edible Foods for Human Survival. Great book. If you don't have it, get it. The point is, what was mine? Oh yes, COVID is a gift. Because what I've noticed with my students, if they're not sick enough, they're not scared enough, and they're not going to make the inconvenient change of doing the right food. We now have people who are beginning to wake up because they're scared. Number one risk factor for COVID is vitamin D deficiency.
So simple. The next thing is that now there's no food. So what are people going to do? They're going to start looking in their community. So we have an opportunity to start bridging that gap between going to a supermarket where there's crap, and now there isn't any crap. So what do? You start looking who's going to sell you from the guy down the road and this person over here, and we can begin to create an infrastructure that is localized so we get away from the corporate model.
The silver lining in COVID.
Yeah. It's good, right?
Hi, my name's Jackie. I live across the river over in Greene County. Joel, you've been a huge inspiration in my life, and I started farming several years ago. And my question, or what I want to present here, is, Dell, you asked how many of us own a farm here and how many are consumers. I work on farms, but because I work on farms, I don't have enough money to ever own my own farm. So I could not raise my hand as a farm owner, but I am a devoted worker. I know how to grow things. I know how to raise livestock. This is my passion. This is my calling. My question is right now we're also facing, I know I'm not alone. I know that there are several other workers out there that know that we have the tools and we have the passion inside of us, but what we don't have is access to land, especially here in New York State. My question is in this idea of to move forward, we strengthen our strengths and we focus on our local communities and we forget the bigger policy. That is what I am all about. Before I was getting political, I was involved in all of these other things. I was more heavily intellectual until I discovered the absolute joy of working in the soil myself. And that also means I don't have enough money and I don't have enough time to be involved in anything else because I am actively a farmer. How can we then, to strengthen the strength, how can we mobilize all of us farm workers out there? How can we get access to land? If this is going to shift really quickly, like I'm standing here saying I can grow lots of food for all of you, and I know that my friends can as well, but the one thing that we don't have is we don't have financial resources or land to be able to do it on. So I propose that question to the roundtable.
It's a really good question. Something I think that.
Can I respond to that? I just want to thank you. Can I respond?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I just want to say, I really appreciate that question, and I'm part of a project right now. It's a land back project in the Schoharie Valley. I'm working with the Mohawk to buy 60 acres of farmland to establish a Mohawk language school and farming school in the Schoharie Valley, and I think. I want to say that if you're a farmer and you need land, I think you should put it out there. Reach out to your community, reach out to foundations and people who have wealth, because I think there is a growing interest in supporting small farmers and conserving land for small farmers, because I think more and more people are waking up to the importance of preserving and buying farmland specifically so it can be held in trust for farmers in perpetuity without putting them in too much debt. So you might want to look into the CLT movement. The Schumacher Center has some information on, and they have some models where they've bought land, raised money from a community to buy farmland, put it into a community land trust that is then leased to small farmers for 100 years or so. But that is one way that we can start to preserve and hold land in trust for small farmers in perpetuity. Thank you.
I wanted to add to this a little bit with our own family story, which is the only reason my parents could farm was because my granddad had enough land for them to take on. And then the only reason we survived through the 80s was because my dad grew weed. Nobody wanted enough vegetables. So there's no easy way. And then we figured out salads.
Did you say what I think you said?
Yeah, I did. Okay. I did. It's legal in New York now. We're growing it too. But
I know you said wheat.
No, weed. Yeah.
Weed.
There's always, it's sort of like a lucky route, and it's really tricky. And then locally, there are efforts at the Land Conservancy level that haven't picked up enough steam, and there have been some land linking. And there are groups like Scenic Hudson who have money in their budget to acquire land. But what they have not done yet, and this is where I do think getting involved locally and regionally, is making noise with Dutchess Land Conservancy, Columbia Land Conservancy, Scenic Hudson, all groups I work with and like, but they need to hear from farmers like you that you need to do more than just conserve land. You need to get land to me to grow food for our community. And that's actually an investment. And Scenic Hudson has a food shed initiative funded by New York City. What would make more sense than using our land here to feed New York City and communities there? And while I don't have an over there, getting to farmland is a circuitous route for anyone. To Chris's point, the Schumacher Society, there's an affiliate program in the Berkshires for farmland acquisition, and my father was able to buy his land in a community where the adjacent owners didn't want the field to be developed. But there is no open solution to land access, and that's because this goes back to the beginning of when this country sort of was going to be federal or distributed landowners. And granted, that was not all the right people with those ideas. But land ownership is ultimately the path to freedom. So farmers like you who want to feed people need to get land, and then this can work. And I can't tell you exactly how to get there, but I have faith looking at you that you will. So.
I agree with that. I want to add to that, though, that I think that people like yourself can end up being the difference makers in this world. I think one of the things we do is we come here and ask for a solution to be handed to us, when ultimately, and when people come up to me, Dell, what can I do? What is it I'm supposed to do? I say, I have no idea what your talent is. I don't know where you come from. But I think that if we all start listening to this guidance inside of us, we're really being led and guided to what we're supposed to do. It may not be you. Someone in this room might have just heard your question, but someone should probably, I would start talking to Joel, because I'm pretty sure I was at your farm one weekend and I met like one really rich couple that have a ton of land that wanted to convert it into the way he's doing it. No one on their farm knows how to do it. And so there is some connecting process that could happen, an education system that would get it off of Joel's shoulders, because I'm sure you're getting that question all the time. And someone needs to build a website. Someone needs to say, wait a minute, this is something I care about.
Here in New York, the New York Farm Finder. So people with land and people who want to farm get matched together. So that's one thing. But nationally, it's a massive issue. The consolidation of ownership of land and the transition of farmland to fewer and fewer hands. I mean, this is the game. And then the increased competition, particularly when we look here in New York State or in the Hudson Valley, with all of the people from Manhattan now wanting to build on land, and then this bogus solar industry, which is then covering up our beautiful farmland with solar panels as a quote green energy solution. There's a real problem, and so I sadly don't have an answer except for that one website. But it's something that needs to be mobilized behind, and not just you for yet another issue.
And by the way, just because there's a website doesn't mean there couldn't be another one, or and more focused on particular ways of farming that maybe you master. I mean, I'm just saying we tend to keep waiting for someone else to have a solution, and really all I ever did was start a podcast, and then you just one foot in front of the other, you just start seeing that it takes a life of its own. What I can say to you is this, that I didn't realize: there is a lot of money out there of people that really care, but are so busy making their money they don't know what to do with the land they have. And so what you have to recognize is you're not abandoned. There's a need. You're actually needed. And you just have to figure out a way, how do I create that connection with those people that are out there? All right?
Good. Hi, I'm Kane from upstate New York, long-time listener, first-time caller. You guys, during this conversation here, I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad you guys are putting this on. And one of the things that brought me out here was the problem with Mr. Miller. And seeing what was happening with him and the federal government trying to shut him down for actually providing food and resources to people who asked him to provide that food and resources to them. And what was hinted about was that, he's going to court right now, and in about 3 weeks or so, he's going to have to make a choice. And what disturbed me was that he currently has just a public defender helping him.
Yeah.
And it kind of shocked me. I was thinking that, well, wait a minute, we have this huge organization here, and all these people in this community. Why doesn't he have something like Mr. Siri out there, like a piranha, chewing on these people and getting them off of his back? Is there a way in this community, or is there something like that already established that he doesn't have contact with?
So yeah, that's all of that's underway. I mean, that's all taking place. A lot of the issue, to be clear, with someone like Amos Miller is that you have to understand that the Amish don't like interacting in court systems. They don't, and so there's a large part of his problem was just not engaging with the system soon enough, not bringing in somebody that, reaching out to groups and saying, I need some help here, doing the minimum necessary to just get through the day. And now he is in a very difficult situation. And there are several organizations, including my own, quietly, that are trying to figure out how to help. Like, where is it at now and what can be done? It's difficult though, right? Because there's a cultural difference. There's a total, we might have handled this differently. And I want to say, not that I'm just only lightly getting that story. I'm kind of surprised that the USDA is not quite the evil empire approach in this. The judge and things this have been trying to get him to make some choices, like get yourself a real lawyer. I mean, the judge has been saying that, right? And so it's not quite the big Goliath mean story. They want to find a way through, but it's going to take some work. So I just want to put that out there, because we tend to really make a bad guy of things. This is a situation where some of it is a communication gap, some of it is a cultural gap, and then it's messy. Right. It's messy.
Thanks for clarifying that, though.
Good.
Yeah, we've certainly had our run-ins, with the same type of bureaucrats. And we never go at them alone.
Right.
We call our elected officials, both Democrats and Republicans. They've all been very helpful. Legislative aides are helpful. Good legal counsel is helpful. I mean,
Let me say this about legal, because I am very litigious. Never thought I would be. Even though I bring a lot of lawsuits against the government and things like that. Yeah. But whether it's a divorce case and issues with your child, or how your child's going to be medically handled and this and that, let me just make this perfectly clear. Get the best freaking lawyer you can get at the moment that you need a lawyer. Like, people tend to nickel and dime and go cheap, and you will regret that. Our judicial system is based on who has the best lawyer wins, and it's not a place to go cheap. All the things you care about, the stories always go bad when, you went with somebody's friend or whatever that cut you a deal. Getting a lawyer is not somewhere where you want to cut a deal. Find the best person you can find.
Don't go cheap on attorneys.
No.
Or on food.
Really?
That's
too simple.
Does that mean you need to feed your attorney?
Feed your attorney well.
Yeah. Where's this line at? I see like a blob of people. Is there? I'm just trying to get that's the end right there. All right, let's go through this, and then also after this, we're going to have some good community fellowship. We got a band playing, so stick around for some.
It's going to be dynamite.
For some dynamite.
Yes.
Dynamite.
Yeah, right.
Stick around for some dynamite. Name it where you're from.
Hi, I'm Kathy from New York. I'm from the city.
Wait, uh-oh.
Okay, I wanted to share 2 resources, and I have 2 comments, if you allow me that. The 2 resources that I learned about from,
You might be losing your battery on that. I don't know.
Don't go cheap on audio equipment either.
2 resources is CHD, Children's Health Defense. I learned is Salatin report. Joe Salatin mentioned earlier, and
And Salatin had an interview with Pete Kennedy just Thursday that was released on state and local officials. You are stronger than you think you are with Pete Kennedy. And it has a whole list of how you can approach your government officials for, I guess, effective change that you want to make in your local area. So if I'm probably preaching to the choir, but if you're not a member of CHD or Solari, those are two organizations, in addition to iWire and Format, that you should, belong to. My two comments. You mentioned Haiti. My parents are of Haitian descent. Haiti has always been a poor country, but from back when my parents were back in Haiti in the 60s and 70s, as poor as it was, people were always able to feed themselves. But because of external economic pressures that were put upon not only Haiti, but third world in general, these poor countries go from not just being, poor where they can feed themselves to now that they're starving. And if you want a very quick example of that, that's what happened in Sri Lanka. You're talking about people who were able to feed themselves, who were independently able to feed themselves, who are now starving because of, well, it may not be economic policy, these are green policies. We have to, be very mindful about government policies. Everything is brought to us with bells and whistles on how all of these policies are going to make our lives beautiful, and in reality, they're all traps. Change, exactly. Change happens from the bottom up, not top down. You have to make effective change in your life and be the key is self-sufficiency. If you are not self-sufficient and you are relying on someone else to hand you something, you're going to fall into a trap. So those are my two comments and my two... All right.
Hello, my name is Ken Widinara, and I would like to play some music for you in the end of the show, as was mentioned, referred to as Dynamite. I took notes, but the notes have turned into a poem and a song. I set it to music, and you'll hear it later. Okay, so the poem goes like this. First of all, this is inspired by Joel Salatin. And I would say, let's create a culture of genuine freedom and enjoy our community and have a shindig. Let's have a shindig. You dig, I dig, we dig. Don't give me no artificiality. Give me some real biology. Let's make a groove economy between nature and humanity. What I need is what's right to experience life. What I need is what's right to perform my life. What I'll eat is what's right to experience love. What I'll eat is what's right to perform my love. Let us assert our choice to choose. Raw milk from a cow or a goat. Don't give me no bureaucracy between my lips and my throat. Let's all feel free so we can have a shindig. You dig. I dig. The we dig.
That's a real tough act to follow.
I knew I was going to say the same thing. My name is Paul from New Jersey. As I sat here, and there was a lot of discussions about what are the big things that we can do, and I felt a little bit of I think within this group, when Dell said, you know what, and these aren't your exact words, maybe we got to leave a bunch of people behind, and we just got to go. And I think there was a good group in here that was like, yeah, let's go. But there's probably a lot of people who are watching this online who aren't at the place where they're here yet, that probably felt that was hard. And what occurred to me is that, you know, I don't know if this is true, but there's the story about the monkeys washing the potatoes, and on one island it happened and then the other, that there's a possibility that moving without people is not leaving them behind, that there's a consciousness shift that happens, and that you have to move, not because you don't want to bring them, but because that is the way to bring them. Because they can't come until they're ready to start, no matter how much you drag them. And so I think maybe what would be helpful for people to take away from this is maybe what's the one thing that I could do? You know, I can't solve big things, and, you know, if there's a world order that's going to come get us, boy, I don't even know how I'm going to handle that other than to lie in a pile and cry. I mean, I don't even know. So, but what's something you can do? And so maybe if anyone would like to share, if you could recommend to people one thing that you would say, and I think everyone has different perspectives, but maybe what's one thing that people could do, whether it's build a community greenhouse in their neighborhood for 10 families to share, or it's to just say, you know what, I'm going to buy 10% of my vegetables from a farmer, and I'm going to drive an hour to get it. It's going to be a super pain, but I'm just going to do it because that's my one thing as my contribution to the consciousness shift. And so maybe if anyone wanted to share what sort of one thing you might recommend.
Yes.
Nice.
Those are good ideas.
Joel, I heard you correctly. This is kind of like what you said. Let's run an experiment for 30 days, and, you know, don't drink sugar soda and this and that. There was a whole list of them. For me, my one thing is just connect with the local farm. You know, get your food, get as much food as you can from a local farm that's raising it without chemicals. Right. Yeah. It's simple. You know, it doesn't take rocket science. Doesn't, you know, if you're vegan, you're buying vegetables, or if you're not, you're buying meat from a farm like Joel. And anyone can do it for the most part. You know, maybe there's some barriers and whatnot, but for the most part, that's definitely one simple, easy thing that everyone can do, is just like change the way you eat. 1.8 trillion a year on food. Just think about the change if we redirected that money to farmers like Joel and the lady who was here earlier, and she could make more as a farm worker, and it would just make a huge difference.
I would also say there's a huge opportunity. You know, we all know those people who we like, but they aren't quite where we're at. And one thing I often do is just try to turn people on to new sources of information. And that's a critical first step. And meeting someone where they're at, but hey, what are you interested in? And then finding them, maybe listen to Dell. Maybe go on to check out, you know, this guy who isn't really a kook. He has a lot to say. Watch this podcast. Just try to get people, say, hey, instead of your television, why don't you try a new source of information? And then I think that's where we find out it's not about leaving behind, it's more about offering someone the opportunity for enlightenment, and then you find out who is the best team for you to be on. And I think that's a critical thing that we have access to, fortunately, still in this country, is a lot of information, despite many efforts to distort where it is, and is to get people to engage. And from there, they might decide a whole litany of things, including where to go get their new food. And I think that's often the best thing to look at. Because we all want to be moving forward. It's not about moving someone, you know, leaving people behind. But we also would like to see as many possible people move forwards. And that's to me about sharing information. And then you discover more about each other.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Good. Yep.
I wanted to add to that, though. The most important thing we can do, especially in America, in a world where we've been really taught to not talk about things that were going to cause conflicts. We talk about religion or politics or food sources or vaccines or whatever it is. And that silence is why we find ourselves in the problems that we are today. Yeah. I would guess that most of the people in this room are doing conscious things like finding that local farmer. The question is are you telling anybody about it? And so I would totally agree that enrolling one person, if each one of us does that, is so much more effective. You know, I think we think if I'm not Dell Bigtree, if I don't have millions, it's that singular contact, that enrollment, that is the exponential change of the world. So I'd say whatever thing you are doing you love the most, just make sure once a week you at least try to enroll one new person to start moving in that direction.
And if someone does, and when you tell them this, I do this a lot, it's like, if you agree or are into this, please tell someone else.
Correct.
And then that turns into Dell having millions of followers. That's how that happens. I mean, that's how that ended up happening. Somebody told somebody told somebody, and by the time your fire rings out,
I also want to say, don't limit yourself to being a consumer. Don't expand your sense of self beyond that word. Don't let that word define you. We're all investors. We're all citizens. We're all eaters. But I think, particularly in this day of age, there are ways that we can. You don't have to be rich to invest in local food. There are a lot of ways that we can crowdfund and crowdsource the communal buying of a new farm for our friend who was looking for land. There are ways we can organize and invest our dollars beyond just thinking about how we can purchase or consume. So I look up, I would recommend that everyone look up, Slow Money or Steward. There's a bunch of platforms that you can engage in where you can invest in local farms and local food that I think are another big part of the solution.
Thank you, Chris. Name and where you're from.
Michelle Curtis. And
you can hold it.
Thank you.
But don't touch that button.
Greene County, New York. Well, I've been lucky that my life has been very, very different, and I've kind of been out of the system for most of my life. I've been out of the system. I researched in the 80s food, and I left allopathic medicine, I left pharmaceuticals, I changed food, and I've been doing that since. But I had a 30-year practice as an alternative healthcare practitioner, and what I would like to offer, and it kind of follows the gentleman before, is my perspective of some of the things that are going on, why so many people are so, not hearing us and not needing to listen. Really, by the time you get to an adult, you have many belief systems that you have no idea that you have. And for 30 years, I've been trying to talk to people about food, about, every aspect of health, because to me, it's not just one thing, it's all of it, a whole person.
Yeah.
And every part of the system that you deal with knocks that down. When you have a client who's having severe gastrointestinal problems and they go to a doctor and ask the doctor, could it be my food? Should I change anything in my food? Absolutely not. Keep doing everything you're doing. That's consistent.
Yeah.
I've had many people in my practice who were told that that the doctors would not continue with them if they continued with me, not even knowing me or who I was or what I was or anything. So, that's one aspect of the system. I'm a consumer. I have to buy food. I know what it's like to consume out of the system. I know what I've had to do. I had 2 days in bed when they went hydroponic. That's the only time since 2004 I've been in bed and not feeling well. But I went to bed. I couldn't believe it. And what I had to do to try to find out if food was hydroponic or was going to be grown from soil within my area and the farms around and the different stores that that we had, it's a full-time job. So how do you tell, someone who's working, who has children, whatever's going on in their life, older people, we're all caught between the younger and the older, and trying to help. How do you tell them, this is what you have to do? You have to call the farmers. You have to call the companies. You have to do it every 2 years to make sure that they haven't changed their practices because the organic standard keeps falling backwards and backwards, right? But this stuff is too much for most people. And I really believe it all has to do with the simplicity of their belief system. The belief systems that they come into adulthood with are completely strengthened and by every part of the system that we have. Every organization, every agency in the government is no longer an agency that works for us.
Right.
That's really, really hard for people to grab a hold of and to think of. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised that, you could depend on these people to try to help you. But it's so extreme. And you have someone like me who's talking to them. I'm respected by them, but it scares the heck out of them because they know on some level, if I change one thing, I'm going to have to change a lot of other things. So I think
I think I got a question out of that. In fact, I'd like to give an answer and see if I'm right at this table, because I might not be. My response to what you just said, which is I have a mother that's really busy and I need to explain to her all these things about organic and what's not organic. And I would say, look, when you go take someone skiing for the first time, you don't go to the top of the Black Diamond and say, here's how you get down this. You got to give them an entry point. And to me, you know, the simple thing, just buy organic is what I would say to someone like that. Just keep it simple. Don't get into, there are plenty of people that are taking all this a whole lot deeper that will fight that battle in that grocery store or whatever. But if we make it too complex for the entry level people, they're just not even going to enter. And to me, it's better that we at least see those dollars moving organic, keep it simple. And then if they decide to take that understanding deeper and start asking deeper questions, they'll grow to that. I don't know.
I agree completely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and for me, we position ourselves in our marketing. We position ourselves as, we know you're confused. We know you stand in front of that aisle and look at all those labels and what does all that mean? We can fix that. Just buy from us.
Yeah.
You don't ever have to think about it.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Nice.
Can I guess that you watch The High Wire?
Nadia from Connecticut. I just have a quick comment, but first, thank you all for organizing this. This is awesome. Just a quick comment for all of us as customers and those of us who talk to friends and to communities. Just short point to remember that it was 10 cents difference was mentioned earlier today, and sometimes it's not 10 cents, sometimes it's 20% more you pay at the farmer, or sometimes 100% more, and everywhere in between. But to remember that we actually buying a different product. That vegetable that we get at a farm is probably more different than 20-year-old car versus the car that was made this year. The car will get us here anyway, even though if it's old, but that vegetable might not get us because it doesn't have the nutrients if it's hydroponic or even if it's labeled organic. It's probably not going to get our body to where we need to go, as opposed to when we buy food that really has that nutrient. So just a little point to remember for all of us, that when we notice that difference in price, we're buying a different product. This is a different product.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow.
Yes. When I started, I'm spending all this money on good food, and my friends say, "How could you spend all that?" And I say, "Well, let me explain it like this. Do you see my body here? This is you can't put 87 octane in like a Ferrari. This is a highly sophisticated machine. I need premium fuel in here."
Amen.
My name's Adrian. I'm from New Jersey. Drove up from the Jersey Shore today. I'm so happy to be here. And I want to get back to Amos because I sell to them. I'm in sales, so I sell supplements to that store. And the one thing that no one has talked about, kind of you bringing up the sky, is they don't take credit cards there. You probably noticed that when you were there. Everything is cash.
Yeah.
Well, that's if you walk in, but he's got an online portal.
Oh, does he take credit cards now? He used to only not even take credit cards over the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, he does? Well, I stood here all that time to bring attention to that. I'm just going to say that I don't think the government likes that. If you go around to all the Amish stores, you can buy chicken that they process right there, the littler stores that are off the radar, but they don't like that there's no exchange. I mean, like the people that are going after Amos. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What was that?
She's saying the people are going after you.
No farmer, no food, no future. I love that.
Hi, I'm Amy from New York. And
point.
first of all, I just want to say thank you for doing this, and thank you to all the farmers, because without you, I am not a farmer, but without you, I would not eat, and neither would my family, because we get all of our food from farms.
Hey.
I just wanted to make the point that I've been teaching children for 17 years. I'm a preschool teacher. And if any of you are questioning, how do you start a conversation with anyone, tell people in a very easy way. Look at the children. Joel, you made the point that kids are they're allergic to everything. And they are. I mean, 17 years ago when I started, my kids in my classroom had very few allergies. And when I was young, peanut allergies didn't even exist. And now I have kids with a laundry list of things. I can't even bring food in because of everything they're allergic to.
Yeah, right.
They're sick.
Yeah.
They're sicker than they've ever been. I have a child with autism. I didn't know what autism was 20 years ago. And so many kids have autism. So if you want to open up the conversation, just tell people, look at the children. It's an easy way to start the conversation because our kids are sick.
Except the ones who are not being vaccinated. Except the ones who are not
Hi, my name
vaccinated.
is Tara. I'm from Connecticut. The film that was mentioned before from the guy Dane Winnington, I just watched that the other day too, and it was devastating. And so to come here today and to just hear all of you with such unique perspectives, but such amazing insights, it's just so uplifting. So I appreciate that tremendously. I think we all do. But I also just want to mention, I'm relatively new to where I live, and I'd been looking for an organic farm and really wasn't having any success with that, and then happened to hear, and I think Dave is through your, the Real Organic, and went on the website. There was one like 7 minutes from me that I had never even heard about. So thank you for that, all of you. I mean, tremendous. This is how we change things. Thank you so much.
So I just wanted to say, because of these things, we can act pretty fast. So while Jackie was talking about trying to find land to farm on, I had an inspiration and just hopped on and bought a domain called landcheckers.org. So games, the fastest way people learn. So if there's land here and there's a farmer here, we sort of got to play this game where we come up with agreements, legally have it, so that we can do this, but then connect the farmer to the land. So landcheckers.org and maybe landcheckers@gmail.com will be live in a few days. And if any of you watching this or here can just remember that in the next couple days, there'll be a way to connect right from here. So Land Checkers is a game we can play for our kids so that they have food with their meals. So.
Love it. Great.
Oh, good.
Hello, thank you all. My name is Sten Wilson. I'm a farmer here in the Hudson Valley as well. I'm also an investor and an advocate. I've worn out multiple pairs of shoes in Washington, D.C. The power here is you need to draft legislation that everybody can agree upon in every state. You need to mobilize the forces. You have advocates in Washington, D.C. and lobbying groups that will work with you. You have to create momentum in Washington, D.C. Our vote still matters in Washington, D.C. Every single person in this room can go with a cohesive and coherent message down to our elected officials, and enough people can make a difference. You need to take up their time that they're so sick and tired of hearing the issue that they actually do something about it. That's how you fix the problem. It starts at that table. You need to draft legislation and put it forward. That's how you fix the problem.
I just want to add that I have all these wonderful signatures, so thank you, everybody. And we will be contacting you if there's anybody who wants to help organize or anything, and because we have a short amount of time, right, to get this done. So let's do it. And come add your name to the list, please, if you haven't already.
What was that?
I'm going to bring this in for a close here, unless anyone has any final.
I think you just got.
I want to say.
What do you got, Abby?
Words matter. The word consumer is not an honorable term. Give it up unless you're committed to being one. It is a different thing to be a customer than to be a consumer. So use the words.
Yeah.
The history of that one, it was put there by the corporations that had gone from being the merchants, and they got too big for the customers. They cease to be equals on equal sides of the fence. And so the merchant, which became the capitalist, named the customer a consumer because they want them to destroy utterly, which is what to consume means. Its number one, first meaning is to destroy utterly. And that's what they want us to do with stuff.
That's what we are doing.
That's what we are doing.
We call ours patrons.
Good,
patrons.
absolutely.
Like patron saints.
Sure.
Patron saints.
Right.
They keep the artist alive.
That's right. Good, great. Anyway,
I like that. It's important. I like to use the word food eater.
A food
because when you just think about it differently,
Eater.
in your head, you get this whole new perspective, and all of a sudden, things that you didn't think were possible before, become possible.
Yes.
And so, whoever wants to stay around for the
music, right?
Go ahead and do it.
Right.
And
let it get going and see if you want to stay.
Everyone who's been watching online for the live stream, we will have more events like this around the country. So stay tuned for more. Joel, thank you very much. Dave, Ben, Dell, Abby, Chris, and Elizabeth. This is a real honor to spend this time with you around this table. And thank you, everyone else, for